Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chillin with the Villain, the classic wrestling review podcast where we sit down, chill out, and watch some classic wrestling, then review it for you, the I used to watch wrestling types. Today's show, as voted by you, the listeners of Chillin with the Villain, we take it all the way back to Survivor Series 2002, live from the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden. The first ever Elimination Chamber match, the first ever pay-per-view held under the WWE name. Heyman turns on Lesnar, Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner debuts, the women go hardcore, and the SmackDown 6 is in full effect. But before I go any further, allow me to introduce myself. I am the villain, Marty Skull. Pro wrestling veteran, globe trotter, but most importantly, a massive wrestling fan. Joining me today is one of those men that used to watch wrestling, but he's watching wrestling again now for your entertainment. The producer of the show, my co-host, Mr. Sir Samuel Scott.
Hello, everybody. Yeah. If you're trying to get me back into wrestling, you're going a good way about it. Well,
last week we covered was episode 1, the first ever Chillin' with the Villain. We covered the Raw after WrestleMania 14, and it was a terrific show, a really, really fun show. And it seems like a lot of people enjoyed it. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of people reaching out saying that they really enjoyed the show. So thank you to everyone that listened to week 1. It seems like today we have another good show because we put it to the polls. And Survivor Series 2002 won with a whopping 44%. That's nearly half, right? Is my math right?
It's getting better.
Do you want to hear the percentages on this? So Uncensored 95, which I actually kind of wanted to win, came in last with 12%. Then it was King of the Ring 1993 with 18%. Then Halloween Havoc 1993 with 26%. But the winner, Survivor Series 2002. So people want to hear about this show. Maybe people want to hear more modern wrestling. I feel like this still counts as classic wrestling, right? 2002. How many years ago was that?
Yeah, I would say this is the Ruthless Aggression era, or was that the next year? Where would you put this? End of 2002.
I would say Ruthless Aggression era is around this time, yeah. I guess you would consider Ruthless Aggression era when John Cena debuted and did that Ruthless Aggression promo. But you would probably say a lot of people look at the end of the Attitude Era to be when Austin turned heel at WrestleMania 17. People consider that the end of the Attitude Era. And then I guess there's a little area where I don't know if you consider it, it's kind of halfway between Attitude Era, halfway between Ruthless Aggression era. But I would say this was kind of, the start of the Ruthless Aggression era.
We're bound to talk about it if this is the case. Was this the start of, or was this around that invasion when WCW and ECW, it was bought out and it was all like commingled, right?
So yeah, this was about a year, 6 months after the invasion. The year previously, Survivor Series 2001 was the end of the invasion angle. So this is a year moved on, but we're still in that place where we have a lot of the WCW wrestlers. And because when WCW finished, I'm sure people remember the invasion angle, none of the big stars were involved because they were all sitting out their Time Warner contracts. So at this point, we're actually seeing a bunch of the wrestlers, their contracts have expired with Time Warner and they're coming into the WWE. Guys like Rey Mysterio, Ric Flair, Scott Steiner, which we'll talk about later, obviously. So it's a really, really interesting time. This might be the most star-studded era of WWE, 2002, because like I said, they've got all the guys, not all the guys, but the majority of the top guys from WCW, the majority of the top guys still in WWE. So I actually feel like this is a really underrated era. Like you, I feel by about 2002, I was thinking, wrestling's not as good as it used to be. Figured it back then. But now I go back and watch the year 2002 and I think, my Lord, this was amazing. Like SummerSlam 2002, which I'm sure we'll cover one day, And this pay-per-view, two of my favorite pay-per-views ever. 2002 actually was a really, really good year for the WWE. I feel like they're really smashing it out. And obviously, we're going to get to it throughout this show today.
Yeah, well, if this pay-per-view is anything to go by, I feel like I did kind of check out too early, for sure.
Absolutely. But yeah, thanks to everyone that voted on this show.
Yeah.
If you want to follow us on Instagram, check us out at The Villain Pod. I'm putting up some fun reels on there and some fun discussion and debate. So join us on at The Villain Pod. And it's the same for YouTube as well. Go subscribe to us on YouTube. You get to watch all those shorts. Is it shorts on YouTube? Shorts, reels, all the videos, everything else on YouTube. So shall we get into this show?
Let's get to it.
So it's the Survivor Series 2002, November 17th, 2002, live from Madison Square Garden in New York. The attendance, 17,930. And the buy rate for this show was 340,000. Just to put things into perspective, the previous year's Survivor Series 2001, did a buy rate of 450,000. So we are down 110,000 buys from the previous year. So maybe business is somewhat down. It's also worth noting that this is the first Survivor Series to be held under the WWE brand name. WWE obviously was WWF before, got in a little legal
tussle
with the animals of the world. What is it? The World Wildlife Federation?
World Wildlife Fund.
That's it. Sorry.
Federation.
The World Wildlife Federation. I want to make that on a t-shirt. I also think this is the first show under the brand extension or the brand split as well, where the roster's split between Raw and SmackDown.
They were certainly hammering that home, the brand split, weren't they? Raw and SmackDown present Survivor Series. So that's really the first time I can think of where I've heard of this, where they're really kind of hammering home the fact that Raw and SmackDown are two different things entirely.
Well, it was actually kind of confusing, right? Because they had the brand split, and then Raw and SmackDown would have their own pay-per-views. Was only Raw or was only SmackDown? But then the big shows, the big pay-per-views, it would be both brands represented on the show. So WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, I believe, Survivor Series, both brands. But then the B pay-per-views, I guess you would call them, obviously they didn't advertise it as them, would be SmackDown only or Raw only. So
Survivor Series is considered one of the bigger pay-per-views, is it?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The big four would be WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Survivor Series, one of the earliest pay-per-views that they did back in the day. And obviously, I think it's worth noting that this particular Survivor Series, it doesn't have any traditional Survivor Series matches. So the original concept for Survivor Series, I think it was teams of 5 strive to survive was the idea, where it would be either 8-man tags or 10-man tags with elimination style. And I really enjoyed that as a kid. I really, really loved the Survivor Series events. And then
so it's like a tournament, is it?
No, not a tournament. No, just 8-man or 10-man tag matches, and there's elimination.
Oh, in one match.
The whole show was 8-man tags or 10-man tags. The
I need
whole
to see
show.
these.
Well, we'll get to them eventually.
Yeah,
we will. But I really love that concept, and I think over time, WWE decided that it wasn't the easiest thing to promote. Obviously, a big one-on-one match or a big grudge match would sell more pay-per-views than just, this is a 10-man tag with Hogan teaming with Tugboat and the Big Boss Man versus the $1 Million Man and Jake the Snake Roberts, whatever it might be. I think those one-on-one matches sold better. So yeah, this was one of the first times that Survivor Series had no Survivor Series matches other than 1998, which is another show I would really like to review at some point. So should we get into the show? I think that's enough background, is it not?
That's plenty.
Okay, so the show starts. We have a video package promoting the card. We see clips of Brock Lesnar versus Big Show. We see clips of the Elimination Chamber being built. We also got a voiceover from Eric Bischoff where he's putting over the Elimination Chamber, saying that the men will fight for their survival and put their lives on the line. Also in this video package, we see the lesbians kissing, which I'm not sure had anything to do with this show. I'm not sure if you
Who's
noticed
the
that.
lesbians? Are they a tag team?
There was a weird thing where Eric Bischoff had just come into the company as the general manager of Raw, and he wanted to make the show more exciting than SmackDown. So he would do a bunch of different stuff to make the show the must-see show or the premiere show. And one of them was bringing lesbians out to like make out in the ring and stuff.
But who are the lesbians? You mean just two random women from the
Two
crowd?
random women. They would just
God.
extras. Yeah, they called the segments HLA, Hot Lesbian Action. That was something they were promoting on Raw at the time. So we just had that conversation about the Attitude Era, if we were still in it or not. This seems very Attitude Era.
It's on the tail end of the Attitude Era for sure. Yeah.
I've obviously mentioned that this is the first Elimination Chamber. So at this point, before this show, nobody knows what the Elimination Chamber looks like. So this video package of the Elimination Chamber being built, I thought was really cool. And they're describing the thing, saying it weighs whatever it was, 20,000 pounds. It's 2 miles of chain. The idea of the guys making it, I thought was a really nice effect.
Really selling it. Yeah, like it was 31 feet across or 21 feet high, and all of this just really kind of letting you know the magnitude of the actual device, or however you'd call it itself. Really selling the integrity of it. It was good. It was good. If you're not sure how much it weighed, by the way, I guess you could ask RVD, because obviously we'll find out later that he carried the entire Elimination Chamber on his back for the first half.
Well, that's your opinion. That's not fact. I will say this video package plays, and then at the end of it, I got goosebumps when it said and now Raw and SmackDown presents Survivor Series. That and now I really, really enjoyed. It's a shame they don't do that anymore. I got like so pumped up hearing that. And now Raw and SmackDown present Survivor Series. I'm not doing it as good as the guy that does the voiceover does, but I really enjoyed that. This kicks straight into Saliva, Always, the track Always, which we will hear throughout this whole entire show. If you can watch this show and not get this song stuck in your head, then you're a better man than me. This song plays the whole show.
It does.
Are you a fan of Saliva, Sam?
No. You? It's not our bag, is it?
It's a catchy song. I remember enjoying it at the time.
Yeah.
I can't live without you. Oh, I'll sing it for you. I love you. I hate you. I can't live without you.
I hope we're not going to get a copyright strike, because that was perfect.
We then see. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, in that video package, I just wanted to bring up that they mentioned that Eric Bischoff invented the Elimination Chamber, like it was his brainchild. Was it actually, or was it just like for an angle? Okay,
storyline purposes. So
it was.
Here's the backstory of the Elimination Chamber in kayfabe. A month previous, I believe it was. What was the pay-per-view? It escapes my head right now. But Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker had a Hell in a Cell match. And they considered it a great Hell in a Cell. And this was on the SmackDown brand. So Eric Bischoff, seeing that Hell in a Cell match and how much attraction that got, he wanted to compete with that and do something even better and more spectacular. So he come up with the idea of the Elimination Chamber. Now, he said in his promo where he announced it, the Elimination Chamber would be a cross between the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, and War Games. Now, War Games was a WCW pay-per-view where they'd have 2 rings and a cage over the 2 rings. And it would be teams of either 4 or 5. And they would come in, each team, a member of the team would come in every 5 minutes or so. And then once everyone was in the ring, then it was one pinfall to decide who the winners were. I believe that Triple H actually wanted to do War Games for this pay-per-view. But, of course, Vince McMahon wasn't keen on doing ideas from WCW. Right. He'd always like to make things his own, which I respect is cool. So instead, they came up with the Elimination Chamber concept as kind of their version of War Games. And I guess it does have ideas from each of those things. The Royal Rumble, the idea of the staggered entrances, the Survivor Series, the idea that it's elimination, and then War Games, the idea of the big cage. So yeah, but in kayfabe, it was Eric Bischoff's idea. So moving on, we see shots of a packed house at the World, previously WWF New York. Now, for those of you, I'm assuming you're not too aware of the World.
I knew WWF New York, and I was going to ask, was that like a renovation or is it a sister site? I don't know what the World is.
Okay, so yes, the World was WWF New York. Basically, it was a nightclub slash restaurant slash store in Times Square in New York City. It opened in November 1999, and originally it was WWF New York. And I think basically what happened was they realized how much money it costs to have something in Times Square, which is obviously kind of ridiculous. And they ended up changing the name to the World to try and cater maybe to non-wrestling fans. Okay. So people would just see it as a nightclub and everything else. This is considered one of Vince McMahon's kind of failures, along with the original XFL and Ico Pro back in the day. But yeah, I mean, didn't they say something like 60% of restaurant businesses shut down within the first year? And then it's maybe 80% after that in the next 2 years. So it's no surprise that this did not work out, because the expense to have something in Times Square must have been ridiculous. And if all they're doing is selling meals and everything else, I can't imagine it ever surviving. That being said, I always wanted to go to WWF New York. I think myself as a young man, this would have been a dream of mine to go to something like this. I will say this though, since turned into a Hard Rock Cafe. I guess when the World closed down in 2003, it turned into a Hard Rock Cafe. And one time I was in Times Square with Will Ospreay, funny enough. I think we were there because we were doing a Ring of Honor show at the Manhattan Center. And we were doing shopping. We were going on a big shopping spree around New York, spending loads of money and enjoying ourselves. I think it was one of the first times I'd really been in New York City. And we saw the Hard Rock Cafe. It was like, oh, let's go eat in the Hard Rock Cafe. So we go there. It looks really busy. We go up and go, oh, can we get ourselves a table, please? And they told us that it was a 5-hour wait. Oh. I just thought, just tell us no. Do you know what I mean? Don't tell us a 5-hour wait. Just say, sorry, we're not accepting anyone now. So yeah, it was pretty funny.
So what was actually happening in the World? Because the venue was it like a sister party that was happening at the same time? Because where was the actual event taking place?
The actual event taking place at Madison Square Garden.
Right. So what were they doing? Were they just trying to advertise the World?
They were
cutting back to it, because that's where the Saliva was playing, right?
Yes, they would, when they did pay-per-views, they would do like pay-per-view parties at the World or pay-per-view showings. So they would have all the fans would have been there watching it on a big screen, and obviously, like you said, they had Saliva there as well. They would often do this. There's a lot of these pay-per-views in 2001, 2002. They would always show, oh, Crash Holly is at the World, or Crash Holly is at WWF New York, and so they'd normally show the pay-per-view live and then have maybe someone that was not on the pay-per-view at WWF New York or the World. Obviously not the biggest stars, because they would have been on the pay-per-view. So I'm sure as a wrestler, it probably was quite disheartening being like, oh, you've got to go to WWF New York for the pay-per-view.
Well, we had Stacy Keibler. She was a pretty big star at the time, wasn't she?
She was. That's true. Obviously, she didn't really wrestle very much, so she's kind of like a perfect star to have at the World.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the first match, the Elimination Tables match. The Dudley Boys, but not Bubba and Devon, Bubba and Spike Dudley and Jeff Hardy, defeat 3-Minute Warning, which is Rosie and Jamal, and Rico in 14:22 when Devon Dudley returned and 3D'd Rico through the table. The ultimate survivor was Bubba Ray Dudley. There's a lot to unpack with this one, Sam.
Yeah, there is. Before we get into the match itself, I just wanted to bring up that we got a shot of JR and the King, and Jim Ross was wearing what we call in the UK his pulling jumper, a very nice sweater. But yeah, this match was interesting. I have a lot of questions. The first one is, since when was Spike Dudley with Bubba Ray known as the Dudley Boys? I thought he was always that third wheel one. I never knew that was an actual thing until I literally watched this pay-per-view.
Before I get into that, you noticed Jim Ross's outfit. Did you notice Michael Cole's outfit?
No, I don't remember it.
He was wearing like a what are they called? A
turtleneck?
A turtleneck. This fleecy, really thick cotton turtleneck and a leather jacket over the top. I was thinking, what? He was obviously trying stuff out. I was thinking, why did he try this? It's very much part of the times, I guess, in 2002. Yeah. But yeah, so Spike Dudley. So, you know, the original gimmick of the Dudley Boys, the idea was that it was a group of them in ECW and they were all half brothers. I guess they had a father that was a ladies' man. Playing around, would go to different cities and get different women pregnant, and they would have the kids, and they all grew up to be the Dudley Boys. Spike Dudley in ECW was Spike Dudley, but he was never part of the actual Dudley Boys. He used to feud with them. He used to wrestle them all the time. So here, I believe Spike Dudley made his WWF debut in 2002, I believe, but they brought him in sort of instantly as one of the Dudley Boys. He was helping the Dudley Boys from his get-go. It was the time when the Dudley Boys were doing the TLC matches and they were feuding with Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea was that the Hardys had Lita, Edge and Christian had Rhino, so Dudley Boys needed some backup and they got Spike Dudley. So when they did the brand split, it was very confusing because I believe, for example, SmackDown drafted the whole NWO as a faction. And you think, if I can get 3 wrestlers for one draft, then obviously I'll pick it. But also, for whatever reason, Devon and Bubba got drafted to different shows. So someone, I can't remember exactly who, but someone picked Bubba Ray Dudley just on his own, rather than just taking both of them. And then the other one, to retaliate, took Devon. So they split the Dudley Boys up. And I don't think the Dudley Boys in real life were too happy about this because that was their act. They were pretty over. I mean, you see here. So Devon got moved to SmackDown and started doing this Reverend gimmick. It was very, very...
God, I remember.
Do you remember
that? Was that where Batista first?
With Batista, yes. Yeah. So he was doing the Reverend gimmick on SmackDown. Bubba Ray was on Raw and was kind of just doing the exact same act as he was doing before. It was just the Dudley Boys still. So they teamed Spike up with him, and I think it was only really a handful of times. This was probably the most prolific match they had, this 6-man tables match. So, yeah, Spike was affiliated with the Dudley Boys, but I don't actually know, did they call them the Dudley Boys or did they just call them the Dudleys?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was the Dudleys.
I think they just called them the Dudleys. This was a super duper hot start. So it's elimination match as well. So to be eliminated, you have to be put for a table.
Yeah. And on my notes as I was watching it, before I knew the result, I've got, it's an elimination match, right?
Yeah.
It's hardcore, it's got tables and Spike Dudley's in it. So you know who's going to be eliminated first, don't you?
Absolutely. I guess actually talking about the Dudleys being split up, also Jeff and Matt Hardy had been split up as well. Matt Hardy had gone to SmackDown and Jeff stayed on Raw. And again, Matt Hardy, he came up with a new gimmick, the Matt Hardy version 1. Jeff Hardy kind of still just being Jeff Hardy, I guess, being one of the Hardy Boys. But yeah, this was a really, really hot opener. One of the things I will mention from the get-go, watching stuff on Peacock, you might not realize this, but there's a lot of stuff cut out, and a lot of the big part of it is the music. So I don't know if you actually remember 3 Minute Warning, but 3 Minute Warning had this awesome entrance music. I believe it was by, I've got it in my notes here, Too Skinny J, the artist is called. But he used to go, 3 minutes and we're out of here. The clock is ticking and we're in the clear. We got 3 minutes and it was like a rap, right? It was a lot better than that, obviously. But it was really cool. And I was very excited to hear the 3 Minute Warning entrance music, and of course we didn't get it played. It was dubbed over. Yeah, it's really, really annoying. And another thing, this match, is probably most famous for. I don't know if you remember later on in the match, Rico stands up to do a moonsault. I think someone was on a table and they cut this because what actually happened was he stands up on the top rope to do a moonsault.
Yeah.
And in real time, he was waiting for like 10 or 15 seconds, waiting for Jeff.
Before Jeff, okay.
Shook the rope from the other side of the ring, but he was waiting and he screams. You hear it perfectly on pay-per-view. He screams, "Come on, Jeff, God damn it." Or "God damn it, Jeff."
I mean, it did seem like quite a long time without the edit. I didn't know that existed, so that's crazy. That must be really infuriating and really embarrassing on the team. So I understand the outburst, but
well, they just had to stand there. He just had to stand there and pretend that he was losing his balance, like, whoa!
Like 10 seconds.
I will say this, just my notes real quickly. Rico looks jacked as hell. You can tell we're in New York because at one point Jeff goes to crossbody Rosie and he drops him straight away. The crowd, "You fucked up. You fucked up." That was a very New York thing. Say. Yeah. Jeff Hardy nearly died trying to do a dive. He did that dive where he jumped off the guy's back and maybe he didn't jump off the guy's back. Sorry. I think on the floor, Rosie and Jamal were holding Spike and then Jeff dived onto them. But of course, because they're holding Spike, they can't really catch Jeff. So Jeff comes over the top rope and pretty much nearly goes over the top of them. I watched it and I was like, ugh. And then later, he tried to do that spot where he walks along the barricade and completely tripped and got that table through in his face. This match was a bit of a car wreck, a very entertaining car wreck.
A very entertaining one. The cameraman getting knocked over, was that planned or was that just a part of the chaos?
I think that was just part of the chaos, yeah.
Because the chaos was really it added to the match. The intensity and the energy of the match it was carnage in the best way possible.
It was carnage. Well, like you've got Jeff Hardy in there. That's a big risk taker. You have Spike in there that can take all these crazy bumps. You've got Bubba, who's obviously an expert with these sort of table and ladder matches. Then Rosie and Jamal, super duper athletic and really, really cool with their power moves and everything else. I always thought when 3-Minute Warning debuted, and I thought they were the coolest team, but for whatever reason, it never really worked out. I have a question for you. Do you know who Jamal is?
Umaga?
Correct, yes. Rosie is so both of them are part of the Samoan dynasty, the Samoan family. Gotcha. So Jamal was Umaga, who is Rikishi's brother. Rosie is Roman Reigns' older brother. And I actually have a funny story about Rosie. So after this 3-minute warning, because I don't think this lasted very long, not too long after this, he ended up teaming with the Hurricane and he became a superhero in training. S-H-I-T. So Hurricane, the gimmick was Hurricane was trying to teach him how to be a superhero. But at the time, I loved Hurricane, and so did my friend Barney. And the WWE were doing a house show somewhere in the UK. I want to say Birmingham. For whatever reason, myself and Barney decided to dress up as Hurricane and Rosie. He was going to be Hurricane and I was going to be Rosie. So I made this outfit. I think my mum helped me. God bless her. Probably thinking, what on earth is he doing? Made a little mask, made like a little bodysuit. I had the Hurricane towel, which is the same one Rosie wore as a cape. And yeah, I drew like a goatee on my faces before I had facial hair, obviously. And we went to the show. And I believe we used to do this a lot. We'd go to WWE shows and we'd always have the cheap tickets. But then we would wait until the show started and see if there were seats near ringside and just go down and fill the seats. And 9 times out of 10, you were fine. But anyway, Hurricane and Rosie come out for the match. And I believe they see us and they're like, point out to us like, oh, you guys. We're like, yeah. So we were over the moon from that. They might have even signed an autograph for us on their entrance. But anyway, after the match, they win the match. They're celebrating. They come over to us and they pull myself and Barney over the barricade and they get us in the ring. And we all hit the 4 corner post and do a pose. And this is like at the EDC packed house, like 15,000 people. And I'm like, I don't know, 13 years old. and I'm in the WWE ring going, yay. At the time, I was just such a massive mark. And I saw WWE as such because it was in America, I just felt so far away from it. So being in the ring, it just felt so surreal. It was like an out of body experience at the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
awesome.
I have a picture of it. So if I can work out to
If you
upload
can
it.
find it, yeah, put it up for sure. And we should thank your mum for making that dream
Yeah.
with her crafting skills.
It was funny because years later, I end up working with the Hurricane, Shane Helms.
He's awesome, by the way. I really
He's
love
awesome.
the Hurricane.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of my favorite gimmicks when I was young.
Same.
So years later, I ended up doing a program with him in Ring of Honor, and I remember showing him the picture and telling him about it. So it was really, really cool. So yeah, I was a fan of Rosie. But yeah, this match, just going back to the match, super duper fun match. All these table bumps happening here and there. Some pretty dangerous stuff. Jamal did a top rope splash from the top to the outside for a table, I believe, on Jeff. Just looks like he absolutely crushed him.
Yeah. it was crazy. I've got to say, tabling yourself and it not counting for an elimination match does seem like a wishy-washy rule.
They seem to change the rules on this every now and then. I feel like I've seen tables matches where going through yourself does count, and then later they would decide, oh no, it doesn't count. So
what do you think? I think it should count. If it's an elimination match, absolutely.
I think it should count. I feel like the first ever tables match was from your favorite pay-per-view ever, Royal Rumble 2000, I believe, was it? Jeff Hardys and Dudleys. And I remember watching that at the time and just being like, what is this? My mind was like completely blown at the time. Are you a fan of table matches?
100%. Yeah.
I feel like
I don't know why I don't know if it's the sound of it breaking or something, but there's something so addictive to it, and it never gets boring.
I feel like it is kind of boring now. The table bumps.
Well, I mean, ask me in 50 episodes time, but I still like it. I really do. It's my favorite. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite kind of like gimmick or match. No, I am gonna say that. I do. I just like pure tables match. Better than TLC or a ladder match or something. I don't know.
Really?
It's very if you get tabled, you're eliminated. It's just a very kind of clean rule. Which is why I'm so annoyed about the whole tabling yourself doesn't count. Whereas the ladder match is sometimes you have to get an item, and there's just like other things. But I feel like a tables match just being, hey, if you go through that thing, it's game over.
You raise a good point.
It's excellent.
You raise a good point because so there's a TLC match, right, which stands for tables, ladders, and chairs. But the tables and chairs part don't actually play into the rules.
Other than the rules, yeah.
You can
go
use
through those
these
as many times as you want.
But a normal ladder match is no disqualification as well. So in a ladder match, you can go through tables and you can use chairs. So realistically, is there any difference between a TLC match and a ladder match? No. There isn't. There isn't, is there?
From a rules perspective, no.
What if they did a TLC match where there was belts at the top, which so you climb the ladder to get that, but you could also lose the match by going through tables. And I guess you'd have to implement the chair as well, which I don't know how you would do. If you get hit in the head with a chair, then you lose.
Well, you lose the game of life. We found out nowadays, yeah. No, or they're the only sanctioned foreign objects.
Okay.
So if you get out a stop sign, there are certain rules, perhaps.
But then in a ladder match, it should be the ladder's the only weapon allowed to be used.
But it's not. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah.
It is.
Or you can only eliminate someone by putting them on a table and then jumping off the ladder. But then that would just favor certain types of performers. So yeah, we're gonna have to come up with the ultimate rule.
It's also worth noting that at the end here, Devon Dudley returns. So he'd been doing that Reverend gimmick. It hadn't really worked. It hadn't really got over. And I think they just thought, you know what? Let's just put the Dudley boys back together. So he ran out and he did get a huge. He got
huge. Okay, yeah. The crowd loved that. And I loved it as well. It was good.
I will say this, but Bubba at the start got a huge pop and Jeff, as always, got a huge pop. What did you think of Jeff Hardy's look here?
The entrance, do you mean?
Just his look,
When he
his
came in with the
attire.
lights?
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I think of when I think of Jeff. Like,
Oh, really?
If you just say think of Jeff, for me, yes, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was something
do,
different.
yeah.
I think when
No,
Jeff...
I should have made it clear. Like the paint, that's why I mentioned the entrance. Like that kind of, I don't know what it's called.
Fluorescent
Plays
paint.
with the light. Yeah. Like that's what I think of when I think of Jeff Hardy.
Oh, really?
But yeah, I think it's cool.
Well, because years later, he kind of developed it into more like he has kind of almost face paint now,
Yeah.
like an actual design and everything else.
Design.
But he looked pretty cool here, even in those sort
He
of
did.
neon bright green pants that he's wearing.
When because I'm not familiar with Rosie and Jamal or 3 Minute Warning, I was expecting a powerbomb and they did like a double flapjack and it just came from nowhere. And I thought it was so cool. And I wondered, because I have no familiarity with 3 Minute Warning, was that like their 3D? You know, like their double move that they're known for, or was that just purely that spot? Because it was awesome. It was really cool.
No, I think Spike Dudley must say to them, okay, what's the coolest way I could die in this
I can
match?
die today.
And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to grab you by your legs and your arms and just swing you face first for a table.
Straight through.
It
was
was
amazing though.
I was like,
I just thought it was I thought it was amazing.
It was cool, but I was like, holy hell, he just kind of went face first through the table. Just absolutely ridiculous, because those tables aren't easy to break, despite what some people might think. They're not the easiest to break. And Spike Dudley here probably weighs what, 150 pounds. So realistically, you'd think you'd want to be thrown through the table where you go back first, so you've got the most chance of breaking it. But just going sort of being swept and driving his face through the table.
It was nuts.
I'm a massive fan of Spike Dudley.
I like Spike Dudley.
Always like Spike Dudley. I wish we had. So like now I feel, again, it feels like I'm ragging on modern day wrestling, but now you'll have a wrestler Spike Dudley size, but they want to be the best at everything. They want to be good at power moves and technical and everything else. Whereas Spike just knew his role. He was the ultimate underdog, and that was Spike Dudley.
We like underdogs, don't we?
We do. We do. Yeah. But no, and I guess we should talk about Rico quickly. Is this the first time you've seen Rico?
Sort of. I mean, I don't know anything about Rico, but I always used to dog on him on the games because I couldn't stand his sideburns. But no, I don't. So who's Rico?
So Rico, I think originally he was a contestant, like a champion contestant on the American Gladiators. And I think he was also a cop. I want to say he was like a cop that got shot a couple of times and survived. Something like that, like a real sort of badass. And then he fell into wrestling later in his life, maybe in his 30s. He'd been in OVW for maybe 3 years or so, or maybe longer, maybe 4 years. And then they finally called him up to the main roster. Originally, he was brought up to the main roster on SmackDown as Billy and Chuck's stylist, was the idea. Yeah, not the best gimmick. And then that lasted for a little while, and I guess he broke up from them, and maybe he went away for a minute, but then he ended up re-debuting in this 3 Minute Warning group. So the idea, I want to say, this 3 Minute Warning, Bischoff was trying to make Raw the most entertaining show to beat SmackDown. So then what he would do is he would do these segments where he would say, you guys have a 3 minute match, like impress me. You've got 3 minutes to impress me, or 3 minutes to not be boring. And it would be, and at the end of it, or before the end of the 3 minutes, Rosie and Jamal would come out and destroy the guys. So the idea was 3 minute warning. It was a bit of an odd gimmick. I didn't really understand the idea of 3 minute warning. Like his catchphrase would be, oh, you've got 3 minutes, and everyone would be like, oh, and then Rosie and Jamal would come out and destroy people. There was one point where they destroyed the lesbians as well. Oh, we should maybe watch that. Yeah.
I think we have to.
Yeah, it was a really odd time, 2002. Really,
it sounds like I missed out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get there. But I felt like Rose and Jamal, I thought were really cool. But the 3 minute thing, it was weird because it was the name, but it wasn't really much of a gimmick. I didn't really understand the 3 minute warning thing, other than the cool theme music. It's almost like they had this cool entrance music where the song sang about 3 minutes, and they were like, oh, let's make a tag team and call them 3-minute warning so we can use this cool song for them.
I'm gonna look into them more. I don't. I thought they were really cool, but I know nothing about them. Will they come up in other pay-per-views or other episodes in the future? Do you reckon? How prevalent were they?
They weren't around as 3-minute warning that long. I think our best chance in watching their stuff is if we cover different Monday Night Raws from 2002, which I'd like to do at some point. So we'll get to see them.
Maybe we'll see them in the future.
Someone we did see was Stacy Keibler at the World.
Yes.
And now Saliva, they sing Always again at the World. This was kind of a unique idea where they had Saliva playing the song Always, and they would kind of go back and forth between showing the band at the World and then showing more video packages for the rest of the show. So a nice idea. They were clearly trying to get over the World on this show.
Advertise, if you're paying for it and you have this segment, you're going to advertise it for free, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Stacey Keibler doing her best. I will say, you asked me if Saliva got in my head, right?
Yes.
For some reason, no, their song didn't. But Stacey Keibler going, "Here's Saliva," did. So I watched this twice in preparation for this, and for some reason, that was what got stuck in my head. Here's Saliva. So, I don't know why. I got the wrong part stuck in my head.
Next up is for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. Billy Kidman defeats Jamie Noble with Nydia to win the title in 7 minutes and 29 seconds with the Shooting Star Press. This, I'm not sure if you remember, Sam, was WWE's after the invasion. WCW had brought in the Cruiserweight Championship, or should I say WWE had brought the WCW Cruiserweight Championship with WCW when they purchased WCW. And then, of course, after the invasion angle and they defeated WCW, of course, they changed the Cruiserweight title into the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. So this was a good display of the WWE's Cruiserweight division. The thing that I noticed first was Billy Kidman's awesome entrance music. Another awesome entrance music here with Billy Kidman, the one that went na na, hey hey, boom boom. You can run if you want to, yeah, but you can't hide. So I got a bit of a kick out of that. 2002 seemed like a good year for entrance music. It's not that we get to hear all of them on this show because of damn Peacock, damn network, but this was a really quick and a fast and furious match. What were your thoughts on the WWE Cruiserweight Championship match, Sam?
I enjoyed it. It moved at such a tight clip. It was kind of nuts. I'm going to say, and you tell me, I feel like maybe because of their need to move at such a tight clip, there was a lot of what you call no selling.
Yes.
That bothered me. But overall, I thought it was awesome.
It made for a fun match, but clearly what had happened here is they've been told, okay, you've got 7 minutes on pay-per-view, and they've just tried to fit everything they possibly
maximize it, yeah. Which I enjoyed and I appreciated.
Yeah, they clearly had a lot of ideas for different moves, different spots, and just wanted to fit them all in. Because there's some points when a guy will get dropped on his head, and then he's up 2 seconds later, giving the other guy a move.
That corner, I don't know what it's called, that corner spike DDT.
Yes.
Was nuts. I loved it.
It was really cool.
It was super cool.
So for people that haven't watched it, Jamie Noble kind of hangs, kind of like Randy Orton's hanging DDT, but he did it from the corner and his feet were on the top ropes. So Billy Kidman just landed straight on his head.
Just vertically, just kadoosh.
Yeah,
so good.
But he still got up after that easily and did a press.
Yeah, again, that's where my comment on the no selling kind of came in. But I think in this instance, because that does bother me, but in this instance, I think I'm happy to get that amount of spots and just really cool things on screen in that short amount of time. I'm willing to kind of give it a bit of a pass on the no selling thing just because of the amount of effort that they put in. I saw so much cool stuff in such a short amount of time.
No, I agree. I did enjoy it despite that. And it didn't necessarily take away from the match for me, but it was something that I noticed. Thinking about it, so far, this has been a very spot heavy show. That first match, of course, was just all highlights and all kind of bish bash bosh with the high spots. This second match, the exact same thing again. I feel like the cruiserweights, they always had this perception, I think, of WWE of the cruiserweights not being able to draw, or the cruiserweights not having any personality, or the crowd didn't really connect with the cruiserweights. And I think if they're only been given 7 minutes, it's kind of hard for them to connect with the crowd. Things like selling and letting stuff register is really important to connect with the crowd. And here they only have 7 minutes, but they want to do a title match, not just a title match, but a title change. And it's on pay-per-view. So of course the guys want to get all their shit in. They want to go balls to the wall. So they do it. And so it gets the oohs and the ahs for the big moves, but at the same time, not a lot of stuff registers because they don't really have time to fully kind of register with the crowd. You do something like that top rope DDT, and they could tell a really good story of that, and just you could have some real sympathy for Billy Kidman, be like, oh my lord, like I think his neck is broken, or the effects of such a devastating move on him. But because they're just trying to get through the match as quick as possible and get to the next spot, you don't really have that. You don't have the sympathy for Billy Kidman. You just think, oh, okay, he's back up and he's hitting the next thing. So yeah, a lot of no selling and not registering these big moves.
Sounds like they're in a tight spot.
Yeah, I think it is. Given the WWE, they tried here with the cruiserweight division. I know last week we spoke about the light heavyweight division from the late 90s. This was kind of WWE's second attempt, and it was definitely much more successful this time, the Cruiserweight Championship. It was around for quite a few years, and it like anything, it had kind of highs and lows. I think it was at its peak when guys like Rey Mysterio were fighting for the belt, and even Matt Hardy. But then later on, of course, end up, I think, like Hornswoggle won it and everything else. So yeah, but yeah, they're giving the guys a chance. These are two guys that had come over from when WWF had purchased WCW. So they were both with WCW till the dying day in 2001. They brought them in here. Interestingly, of course, when WWE gets these guys, they want to repackage them, give them their own gimmick, put their own kind of stamp on the wrestler. So Billy Kidman, I don't know if you remember him from WCW.
I do. And I'm actually more of a fan of his look there. I wasn't really into what he was wearing. He looked like he was wearing a Chinese paper lantern or something. I prefer his more like grungy, like the white
tank top. Yeah. Well, he put on a lot of size here. He was a lot bigger.
He was bigger, wasn't he?
Yeah. WCW, he was a lot smaller, but he wore that white tank top and the blue cut-off jeans, which, funny enough, JB Noble
is what Jamie Noble was wearing.
Yeah. Maybe that's why Kidman couldn't wear it. But yeah, his new sort of updated look, where he's wearing the biker shorts and the boots, kind of a generic look, really. I feel like Billy Kidman was pretty much just known for doing that shooting star press. It was almost like his gimmick was just the guy that does the shooting star press, which
that's how I know him.
Yeah. And in this day and age, that's not very exciting. But at the time, that was a really exciting maneuver. Sure. And I love Billy Kidman just because of the shooting star press. And I thought that was super duper cool. Jamie Noble, he had been in WCW towards the later years. He was actually a part of the Young Dragons, which was a trio of, I think they were supposed to be Japanese guys, I believe, who wore a mask. So was playing a Japanese wrestler. And then I think they took the mask off him and he was Jamie Noble for a little bit. But here they've brought him into WWE. And of course, they want to give guys personality. They want to give guys character and a gimmick. So they've made him this trailer park trash gimmick, which I actually thought he did really, really well. And they did a lot of fun vignettes. Here he's teamed up with Nydia. Yeah. Do you know who Nydia is?
Not a clue, no.
Nydia was the winner of the first WWE or WWF Tough Enough. Her and Maven were the winners.
I was going to say I thought that was Maven.
Yeah,
I didn't know there was two winners. Was that a male and a female winner, or?
I might be getting it wrong. Maybe she won the second year.
No, it couldn't have done because it started in early 2002, didn't it?
Oh, I'm not 100%
sure.
No,
she must have been in the first season.
Okay, maybe she won maybe it was her, and I feel like there maybe was two winners, yeah. Okay. But either way, she'd come from that, and they teamed her up here with Jamie Noble. They did a bunch of fun vignettes. I thought this was a really kind of cool gimmick, different, this sort of trailer park trash gimmick that Jamie Noble was doing.
Slummy, yeah.
Because he was a great wrestler and a great in-ring technician. But obviously with WWE, with weekly TV, just being a great wrestler is not enough to produce good TV. And I think some fans get frustrated when they think, oh, they've given this guy a silly gimmick, or why can't they just let them wrestle or be a pure wrestler? But you got to remember this: you're doing a weekly TV show. If someone's just a wrestler, it's hard to write content for them. Just, okay, he's a good wrestler. Okay, so he has a match. It's a good match, and he wins or he loses. So what can you do with that? But you give this guy, he's a trailer park trash. Oh, we can do loads of stuff with this now. Like, I think they did a gimmick with him where they were trailer park trash, but then he either won the lottery or got an inheritance or something, and they got all this money, and they did all these fun vignettes of that. And they did another thing where, yeah, and it was fun. And of course, they end up losing the money or whatever. And it's good episodic storytelling. It gives you a chance to do that kind of stuff, you know? So yeah. Not a whole lot to say about this match. Nope. I'll tell you what was strange. Kidman wins and then just like runs through the crowd at the end.
Yeah, what was that? Is that
I don't know.
He was, so that wasn't something he did. Because do you remember like Edge and Christian used to come in through the crowd? And, like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
This wasn't, he wasn't known for that. He just darted. That's good.
Maybe he wanted to get out of the building to beat the traffic or something. Because it's center of New York City. So
yeah.
Another thing I did notice here, I don't know if you did as well, but as far as I know, this event was sold out. There seemed to be a lot of empty seats on the hard cam side, and it was really, really off-putting.
So do you mean at the bottom? Like, which one's the hard cam?
Well, the hard cam is what you're seeing. Is where you see, for this show, the hard cam is facing the stage, or lack of stage, because it's MSG. But above that, there was quite a handful of empty seats.
Okay, there was. I thought you were referring to when you just see where the entrance ramp would be at the top. At the bottom, you saw a good sizable portion of the bottom of the crowd, and in the center of that, there was just this massive gangway.
I've produced shows before and worked from the Gorilla and stuff, and I could just imagine. I'm sure Vince was in Gorilla just going nuts at these empty seats. I mean, I do wonder what happened. I assume people, I don't know if I noticed it so much later in the show, so maybe people were just late for the show, but I can imagine producing that show just going nuts at these empty seats, just in pure view of the hard cam.
Do you want to tell people what the Gorilla seat is for people like me?
Gorilla position just means how would you explain it? Well, it's in WWE, typically it's right before the entrance, and it's where they have all the monitors up to watch the show and everything else. So normally with WWE, it might be different now, but they have Vince there kind of doing traffic from the Gorilla position. He can talk to the commentators, he can talk to the producers and the cameramen and everything else. So that's Gorilla position.
It's like the air traffic controller.
Correct. Funny enough, I remember, so I wrestled at Madison Square Garden for Ring of Honor and New Japan joint show back in 2019. And it was pretty funny because, of course, it's in the center of Manhattan, New York City. So it's just a complete pain in the ass to get around anywhere. And I got a taxi from my hotel to the venue. And I had, for my entrance, I was having this big pair of like wings or like deviled wings. So I had this massive bag. Then I had my massive suitcase and everything else. And as I'm getting out of the taxi, I'm thinking, how am I going to be able to carry all this stuff? Like, I don't know what to do. And this guy saw me, a fan saw me, Marty Skell, can I get a picture of you? I thought, I was like, yes, but only if you give me a hand bringing these wings into the building.
Oh, no.
I was like, okay. So then me and this fan had just taken all my stuff into the building. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's pretty good.
It was probably a pretty funny story for him.
For him as well, yeah. You both benefited. Mutually beneficial.
We did.
That's pretty funny.
Do you have any more thoughts on this match?
Yeah, no, I've got nothing else on that match. It was nice. Short and sweet. Really good. Entertaining.
It was entertaining. It was. And a new champion as well. Billy Kidman won the championship.
Yes, which I noticed was a theme, but we'll get to that.
We'll definitely get to that. Next up, we see a backstage pre-tape with Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. At this point, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit are doing a odd couple tag team where they're a team that do not get along. The crowd here is doing the what chants pretty loudly. This is the era of when what was a thing that they would just do constantly. Kurt says that him and Chris are bosom buddies. And then he tells Chris that he doesn't want to shake his hand because tag team partners don't shake hands. Tag team partners hug. It always amazed me how good Kurt Angle was at doing comedy, but then being able to switch it on as a serious threat and serious wrestler as well.
Really good at that.
He could do comedy, but it wouldn't like typecast him, or you wouldn't look at Kurt Angle as a comedy wrestler, but he was phenomenal at comedy.
Yeah, really good. So many Kurt Angle promos come to mind, or little backstage things. Obviously, when he was moving on with Stephanie McMahon, trying to get it on with her. Obviously, the milk truck thing, just all of it. Just yeah, he's had a lot of good moments that are funny and memorable.
I feel like when people talk about the greatest wrestlers of all time, sometimes Kurt Angle's name will get mentioned, but not all the time. And I think like Kurt Angle, there was no weaknesses in his game. He was just great at everything, and he was so good so quickly. He started in 99, or he might have started training in 98. And I want to say by 2000, he's the world champion. It's just incredible, Kurt Angle's run and how talented, how good, how quickly he picked up pro wrestling coming from Olympic style wrestling. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he won the Olympics with a broken freaking neck, of course, in 1996.
It's disgusting. That's crazy.
But not just good in the ring, not just good fundamentally, but like good with everything else. His character and his promos, just really unbelievable.
Have you seen the movie Foxcatcher?
No. What is that?
I can't remember his name. John DuPont, was it? And he had his Olympic wrestling team. And this was a real story. And he went insane and he killed a wrestler with a gun.
Oh, I do know this story. Yeah.
Schwartz.
Yeah, I think
Mark Schwartz was one of them.
I want to say they had something to do with Kurt Angle. He was like,
yeah, I was going to say, I believe Kurt Angle was a part of that Foxcatcher team.
That does ring a bell. Yeah, that does ring a bell.
So he's had an incredible life. Like so many stories.
We would have to get into Kurt Angle one day. I'm sure
he's had a dive. Yeah.
A real incredible life.
Great run. Yeah. I do. What did you call that odd couple start? What did you call it? Where there's tag partners who don't really get along.
I mean, an unlikely tag team or
whatever it's called. I always love that setup. And I'm sure you know who my favorite odd couple was.
Is it Goldust and Booker T?
Of course it was. Which I'm sure we'll get to another time. But
they've done it.
Another example of that. And it's always funny to me. You can call me simple or something, but it always gets a laugh out of me.
Yeah, I mean, they've gone back to that well many a times, maybe because it works. I mean, coming at the top of my head, I think X-Pac and Kane you could see as maybe an odd couple tag team. And then later on, they had Kane and Daniel Bryan do the whole, what was it called? Team Hell No. They've done it a whole bunch of times, this odd couple tag team. But here, I guess it is odd couple, but it's more just two guys that don't get along, but they're in a team and they work as a team.
Yeah, two very, very technically proficient stars whose personalities just don't gel.
Yeah, Kurt Angle was a lot more eccentric and Benoit is a lot more serious.
Yeah. Right. They just work. Like, they just have personality clash.
Absolutely.
They still have the same goals and the same everything. They just, like the Angry Beavers, they just clash. It's good.
Right.
It's a lot of fun.
Next, we see Victoria talking in a mirror. And this appears to be some sort of CCTV footage. It's like a camera.
F-view. They call it.
I didn't notice the F-view. Yeah. So in this, she's talking. That? Well, just before we get there. So she's talking in the mirror. She's doing the mirror on the wall. Who is the most beautiful of them all?
Yeah.
And we don't hear anything. And then we assume that the mirror says Trish Stratus, because then she starts going nuts. And I believe she smashes the mirror, right?
Yeah, she does.
Does. So this FU thing, I don't really remember this. I don't think it was ever explained. I think they did it for a little bit where they would just show these little CCTV footages backstage. They did something very similar in the Attitude Era with GTV, which was also never explained. It would flash up on the screen, GTV, and it would show like secret things that happened backstage. Like I want to say Val Venus and Big Show were in the restroom and Val Venus accidentally peed on Big Show, something along those lines. And it was called GTV. And funny enough, I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be leading up to the return of Goldust, which I guess never ended up happening. So they end up dropping the GTV thing and never explained it. But here, this FU thing, I think it was kind of the same premise. Don't think it was ever explained. I guess it was kind of a unique way of showing stuff backstage.
Candid camera sort of.
Without doing the invisible camera thing where the wrestlers, act like there's no camera there. So what I will say about this, they're obviously trying to get Victoria's gimmick over as crazy and she's unhinged.
Mm-hmm.
This gimmick seems to be a go-to for WWE for women. It seems like there's only like 3 gimmicks for women, and one of them is like a bitch woman. Another, which is here, is they're crazy. They've had so many women that are just crazy.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it's in my notes as well. I mean, we both like Mickie James, right? I think.
Yes.
We both do. But for me, Victoria is the OG obsessed with Trish Stratus bunny boiler.
The Mickie James thing was more like she was an obsessed fan and she was stalking her and everything else. I don't know if Victoria's gimmick was necessarily obsessed with Trish, but again, it's just that she's crazy. Like it's very funny. They're kind of the gimmicks they decide to give the woman. So we're getting ready for the women's championship match. It's a hardcore match with Victoria versus Trish Stratus, where Victoria defeats Trish for the women's title in 7 minutes and 1 second with a fire extinguisher and a snap suplex. Before this match starts, Jerry Lawler comes out with a whole bunch of lines all night. And I don't know if you noticed this. Before this match, he says, anything goes. I just hope it's the clothes. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, he was, I guess you could say he's on fire, but in a bad way. But
Right.
his reductive comments, I just see, if you look at them through the lens of their just color, I don't have a problem with it personally.
It was a sign of the times.
It's not like JR was a grit. He was trying to set him straight constantly,
Yes.
So
yeah.
I didn't. It was a sign of the times, but also, people are like that, so it would make sense that he's a jerk character, the King as well, isn't he? So I guess it kind of worked.
I will say, before this match, we see a video package which is done to some kind of like slasher movie music that and it's showing the build and the feud between Trish and Victoria. It shows how they were both fitness models. I guess the story was that they came into the business in a similar way. Maybe they knew each other from before, but now they're in the WWE and Trish thinks it's all about her and she's the big star. And I guess Victoria is not too happy about this. And apparently so, because in this little video, they show Victoria doing the unprotected chair shot to the head to Trish, which we spoke about these unprotected chair shots last week. I feel like it's one thing when it's Mick Foley or Terry Funk, but again, super duper hard to watch.
It's hard to watch whoever takes them, but yeah, I see your point. Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
They were really making a big point to let us know that this was a hardcore match. Of course, at the time, the women's division had been moved to Raw, and I want to say the cruiserweight division had been moved to SmackDown. And at this point, before this, they've never really tried with the women's division. It was always kind of an afterthought. But here, they're really trying to make something out of it, and they're giving the women more opportunities. I think it was later than this, but maybe a year or two later, Trish and Lita would end up main eventing Raw, which was a really big deal. Mm-hmm. Here, I'm not sure if they say it's the first women's hardcore match, but they kind of insinuate that it is. It actually wasn't. There was a women's hardcore match in the Attitude Era in 1999 with Ivory and Tori, but it was just a throwaway segment on Raw. This was definitely the first women's hardcore match on a pay-per-view. So the idea that they're giving the women more opportunities, I think a lot is that to do with Trish, because they brought Trish in to be a valet and pretty much just brought her in because of the way she looks and her charisma and everything else. I don't think the original idea was to have her as a wrestler, but she decided she wanted to do it. She started training. And so here, she'd only been wrestling for a couple of years at this point, but she'd really started to get into a groove, and they really built the women's division around Trish Stratus. So it was cool that they're giving them opportunities like this. Again, though, of course, Peacock strikes. Victoria's music was dubbed over as well. Did you notice that?
No, I don't know what her music was originally like, but it sounds like every match that you go into when you watch these back and you have an affinity for a certain entrance or something, it's a crapshoot. You've got a 50-50 chance of whether you're going to jump out of your seat or just be absolutely crestfallen. So this was another victim, was it?
She had the song, I can't remember the band. It was a famous song at the time. Oh, the things you said, running through my head, running through my head, running through my head.
Oh, Tattoo.
Tattoo had a music video of like two women kissing, I want to say.
Yeah. Tattoo, they were called. Tatu, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, that was a great song, and it really fit Victoria's gimmick. And
Character.
Here, she just comes to the ring with some like generic dubbed over music, like or whatever it was. So I was upset about that. Going into this match, they worked really hard. They did some really innovative spots with the broom for whatever reason. They were
yes, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, they
flip off the turnbuckle was really cool.
They're both holding the broom and they're doing different. They did like a monkey flip with it. Like you said, I think she flipped her from the top rope. It would also be worth noting that I didn't notice this till like halfway through the match, but they had trash cans in each corner of the ring post, which were full of weapons. So I actually thought it was kind of I'd never really seen that before or after. I thought it was quite a nice touch rather than the wrestlers having to keep going underneath the ring.
They did go underneath the ring, though, didn't they?
I'm sure they did.
At least for the fire extinguisher at the end. They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that until you said it. Yeah, they were taking the pole-based weapons, whatever you want to call them, out of the... Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool concept, because there's always been that thing like, why are there weapons underneath the ring anyway? It's kind of bizarre. But I guess if you're having a hardcore match, okay, we're going to put the weapons here. That kind of... I don't know.
Yeah, sanctioned. It lends to the match. It's like, hey, we have a hardcore match. Here's weapons for you.
Right.
It makes more sense than them having to find them.
It does. I will say this, despite how hard Trish and Victoria are working here, I don't know if you heard it, but earlier on, there is a HLA chant from the crowd, which stands, like I said before, for hot lesbian action, I think it was. And also, of course, Jerry the King, he's just spinning it out here.
Commentary, yeah.
The commentary. So Trish pulls out an ironing board.
The ironing board, yeah.
And Jerry King says, she's domesticated too. Should make the perfect wife.
I did notice when Trish, I think it was setting up the ironing board in the corner, it took so long to get it working.
The ironing board?
Getting the legs working. So I don't think she'd be the King's type.
There's no way Trish does her own ironing now, huh? She has someone do that.
I know, that would be nuts. That would be nuts.
She does. She's got someone doing it for her. And it's funny, this is 2002. Trish Stratus is still wrestling today. She's still on. She came back, I think, for this year's WrestleMania, and she's kind of stayed on. So Trish, and she still looks incredible, in incredible shape. Yeah, Trish, at the time, Trish was my crush. She was my favorite. Yeah. I had a poster of Trish up on my wall. I'm sure I wasn't alone. Trish Stratus people loved Trish Stratus at the time.
Do you want to know who I had on the poster on my wall around that time?
Go on.
Kane. I did.
I'm sure I had all those guys as well. I had all of them as well. You said about the ironing board taking a long time to set up. Did you notice how long it took for Victoria to get the fire extinguisher to work?
I've never used one. I wouldn't even know how to use it. But yeah, I did notice that.
You've got to take a pin out of it, right?
I think so, yeah.
Because Trish was kind of holding her hair, waiting for her. It's funny, in those moments, like, let's say it took 5 seconds. I know being in those moments, it feels like forever.
2 minutes.
Just like, yeah. I remember I had a match with Dalton Castle on a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. It was one of their biggest shows of the year. Supercard of Honor. I believe it was in maybe Fort Lauderdale in Florida, with the main event of the show. It's already been a long as hell show with the main event, Ring of Honor World Title match. And at the time, I'd been using the white powder to throw in people's faces as a thing. And we're in the match. And before the show, I put the white powder in a bag underneath the ring in this corner. I was like, right, make sure no one touches this. Just keep this here, please. And I want to say maybe I put another one somewhere as well, just to make sure there was a backup. So anyway, we're getting through the match. The spot is ready for me to climb under the ring and get the powder. Anyway, so I jump down there, I pull up the apron, and underneath the ring, because there'd been so many like hardcore matches on the show, there'd been a tables match, I want to say, or a tables and ladders match before us. So underneath the ring, it's just all these broken tables. Not only that, but Ring of Honor, they throw the streamers in the ring. And this was one of Ring of Honor's bigger shows where there's like 6,000 people. So they throw all the streamers in the ring, and then the ring crew or the referees, they grab the streamers and they put them underneath the ring. And I'm like the main event of the show, the last match. There's been like 12 matches. I look under the ring and it's just a sea full of broken tables, trash cans, and streamers, just thousands and thousands of streamers. And I could not, for the life of me, find this powder. I couldn't find it at all. And I'm like freaking out to the point where Dalton kind of has to come back up to me and I have to beat him up a little bit more, then go back under the ring trying to find the powder. And I'm sure it wasn't a super long time, but for me, it felt like forever. And I'm just getting more and more frustrated. I'm like, where the fuck is the powder? I put it here and I told everyone to not move the powder. Now, where is it? So I felt for Victoria in this position, especially as it was the finish. Sorry, before I cut you off, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, so I don't know if this was still like the Diva years and everything, but the match, it was a Diva and a hardcore match, but despite both of those things, it managed to somehow not be gratuitous, which I thought was pretty impressive. I thought there were a lot of cool, like we mentioned the mop or the rake, I can't remember what it was.
I think it was a broom, wasn't it?
Or something like that, yeah. And I also liked when you mentioned the chair shot in the promo package, but there was a pan thing, like
it was a trash can lid.
The lid, that was it. Just clocks her around the head and she just falls out of the ring. I thought that was really cool. My problem with it though was, and I bet you're going to say the same thing.
Can I guess?
You've seen her get okay, guess it.
Very, very underwhelming flat finish, I've wrote in my notes.
Flat finish, yes.
So I assume you're...
Yeah, so I've been hit with this. I've been sprayed in the face with that. I've been cracked across the jaw with a trash can lid. And a snap suplex takes me out.
I remember watching this at the time, because just for people that haven't watched this match recently or ever, Victoria sprays the fire extinguisher in Trish's face from the outside. She then climbs in, gives her a snap suplex and kind of floats over and pins her 1, 2, 3. I don't know what happened with this, why she finished the match with a snap suplex.
I have a theory.
I have a couple of theories.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
Well, I was just want to say, I don't know if she was doing the move at the time, but Victoria had a really cool finish. She did the Widow's Peak.
Widow's Peak?
Yeah, where it's hard to kind of get them up in a gory special, then she drops us to her butt, and it's kind of like a neck breaker type move. Really cool. This snap suplex, I have a few theories, because there was another match. I'd have to look through so obviously we'll get there later, but in the main event in the Elimination Chamber, Booker T eliminates Rob Van Dam with a missile dropkick, which also felt kind of underwhelming. And here, Victoria wins with a snap suplex. So I have two theories. Either there was maybe an agent there or a producer there that said, okay, we need to start reeling it back. We just need to start getting simple moves over, and so anything could be a finish, or we make these moves mean more by doing simpler finishes, which is kind of funny. It's kind of what we were talking about last week. So I think either that happened, like maybe there was a really old school agent or producer that was like, oh, back in my day, an Irish whip was a finish or a hard buckle was a finish. So either that or something messed up in the match and they got told they've got to go home now. They've got to go home now. Maybe Victoria panicked, or maybe it could have been a case of she hit the snap suplex and the ref's like, you got to go home. She's like, oh, stay down. 1, 2, 3. It could have been anything. I know Lisa, her real name, Victoria Lisa Marie. I know her. I don't know if this is a weird question to ask her. I feel like if I see her again, maybe I'll ask her what happened with that snap suplex finish. But
actually, if
what
you
was
do
your
see her,
theory?
yeah, if
Yes.
you do see her, ask her, because my theory is, and I could be completely wrong, Victoria brings her mirror from out of underneath the ring, and for anybody who didn't watch it, we're not talking like a pocket handheld mirror. It's a vanity mirror, and she gingerly places it face up on the apron in the corner, and they never used it. And Trish, so Victoria puts it down face up, and this isn't just a weapon. This is also it's her story. It's her character. She has this thing going on with this mirror, so it has significance, and it was just never used. She just puts it down gingerly face up, and it's never used. After she put it down, did you notice Trish walks backwards and she stands on the mirror by mistake and breaks it?
I didn't notice
So
that.
she walks backwards, stands on it, shatters it by mistake because she's not looking. She's in a thing, and I wonder if that mirror was somehow supposed to be part of a finish. It was accidentally broken, and they improvised.
That very well could be what it was. Maybe the finish was supposed to be fire extinguisher, and then she gets in the ring and hits her over the head with the mirror. 1, 2, 3. Maybe that was it, but then they realized that it was broke already and was like, oh, panicked and snap suplex.
Snap suplex. Yeah. So if next speak to her, ask her, because I reckon it was something to do with that mirror, because why bring out that mirror at all to not use it?
Yeah, that is a good point. I will say this match is looked upon very fondly, I think, from wrestling fans. I think mainly for being revolutionary, for being a women's hardcore match, or giving the woman a chance to do a match like this. Me personally, I thought they tried really hard and there was some kind of innovative stuff in there, but I don't think it was the 5-star classic that people kind of try to make out these days.
I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. The finish, the flat finish, bothered me.
Well,
We have our theories.
that to me is the problem. Is to me the finish is like the most important part of the match. So it's almost like you did all that hard work for nothing, you know?
And here's the thing. I really liked the match. There were some botches. That bulldog on the corner.
Oh, that was
landed
bad.
on each other. That was bad. But then also at the same time, if you just live stream me, put a camera on me and ask me to make like a cup of tea, I would screw it up. I'd pour the kettle all over the counter because so what they do is insane. Just absolutely crazy. So, okay. But it did affect it. I can't also brush it under the carpet. And the finish though, if let's say I thought this was a 4-star match, having a finish that flat brings it down a star just alone for me. It wasn't, so I actually really enjoyed it, but it also had some bad parts that really did affect my final outcome of it. But it was really good. The way I look at it is, was it fun? Like, was the match fun overall? Hell yes. So it entertained the hell out of me. It just had its issues that can't be ignored.
Do you think it suffered from the same thing as the previous match? Because this match was 7 minutes and 1 second. So they only got 7 minutes. Do you think it's another case of trying to fit 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag?
No, I don't actually. I feel like if it went any longer, I'd be checking out. I think
Lose your
it
interest.
was exactly the duration that it needed to be. If it didn't have the botches, and if it had a better finish, I really would put it up there.
Okay.
I just can't with those things. I just can't. No, I thought the duration was perfect.
Right.
I don't want to see some endurance slobber knocker, whatever you want to call them, of just women wailing on each other constantly for 15 minutes with weapons. I don't want to see that.
So it's funny. You're like, I thought the match was great, other than the finish. Other than
And
the
the-
botches. No, like, yeah, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it.
I really enjoyed it.
I feel like people look back on it and they make out it was this really amazing match, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think
It
I think,
had too many negatives.
right. It was, but it was a good chance for the woman to come out there, do something different, and start putting the woman on the map. So that part I definitely enjoyed.
Marty, if they didn't botch so much, and if they had a killer finish, or even like you said, just Widow's Peak and done, then how would you feel?
Obviously, would have enjoyed it more. Would have thought it was better. I don't necessarily
You still
think.
wouldn't put it in a.
I don't think
classic.
the match had. Maybe I'm remembering it incorrectly, but I don't feel like the match had a whole lot of heat. I think
I can't remember, but the fact that maybe neither of us could remember proves that it didn't.
They got
we both recognized Devon. The crowd
right.
got wow. So,
I think they got the oohs and the ahs for like the using the weapons and hitting each other over the head with a trash can lid. But I don't think there was a real lot of heat. I don't think it was like they really hated Victoria and really wanted Trish to win so much. I don't feel there was a whole lot of heat in the match. I mean, it's also worth noting that Victoria won the women's title here, so we're 2 for 2 in title matches and title changes. So, yeah. Next up, we see a promo from Eric Bischoff. He's talking about the Elimination Chamber. They're really building this Elimination Chamber throughout the show. He says tonight we will see history and the future all in one night. The most noticeable thing about this is that he's doing this promo. I can see you've got a smile on your face. He's doing it in front of a WWE blimp.
Yeah. And also to make things worse. First of all, I can't stop looking at the blimp. But the blimp, in case you haven't seen it, says Xbox, the original Xbox logo.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I can't remember who it was. One of them was standing halfway over it. So they've covered the X and the B and like half of the O. So it just looks like it says DX. And it's black and green. So it just looked like they're standing behind a massive DX poster. And it was on a blimp.
In this promo, the Big Show pops in and he tells Eric Bischoff that he made a big mistake by trading him. So Big Show not too happy here.
Not happy
with Eric Bischoff.
Obviously we know who he is, and we know that we know the invasion thing happened. I was just wondering at the start if there is any other further context we might need to understand. Yes, we know who he is, but why does he have the decision-making power that he does, in the storyline at least?
Well, first of all, he didn't come in with the invasion angle, which is is really unfortunate. It would have helped the invasion drastically if they would have had Eric Bischoff with the invasion.
Wow, okay.
No, he came in.
Then we definitely need context.
Like I said, there's so many guys that came in, like Flair and Hogan, Hall and Nash and Goldberg, Eric Bischoff. He came in after the invasion. After the invasion was all finished up. I think he might even came in not long after the Survivor Series 2001 when the whole thing finished. Or maybe it was a little bit later. But either way, so I should say, I don't think I mentioned this earlier. Tell me if I did. But I think the brand split, the idea came about because WWE had purchased WCW. And I think the original idea was that they would do WWE Raw and WWE Raw and WCW Nitro. 2 separate shows, 2 different brands. And obviously they would have different rosters. There'd be the WWE and there'd be WCW. That was the original concept. And WCW Nitro, or whatever it was going to be called, would take place of the SmackDown. Then they did a WCW guest match on Raw. I believe it was Booker T and Buff Bagwell. And they made it like a WCW match, had WCW branding, they had WCW commentators, WCW referee. And I guess Vince really, really hated the match and just thought it was crap. Completely lost any faith in WCW and was like, no, we're not bringing Nitro back now. We're going to have it Raw and SmackDown. It's going to be all WWE and we're going to do it, but we're going to still do the brand split. That's how I remember the brand split coming along. So there's that. Bischoff, I'm assuming he had one of these Time Warner contracts after WCW because he obviously wasn't involved in the invasion angle. I'm not sure if they asked him to come in or not. I'm sure they did, but I guess he didn't. But anyway, I guess when this brand split happened, they wanted to have separate general managers for the shows, and they decided to hire Eric Bischoff as the general manager of Raw. And of course, it was one of those really shocking moments and something that you couldn't call, because Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff for years during the Monday Night Wars had been at each other.
Yeah.
Bischoff had been on TV. He'd challenged Vince McMahon to a fight, like live on pay-per-view. He used to, at the start of Nitro, because Raw was taped, at the start of Nitro, he would give away the results for that episode of Raw. So you didn't have to watch you didn't have to watch Raw. You could just watch Nitro and they tell you who's going to win. So
that's great.
These guys hated each other for years. And then all of a sudden, Bischoff's not doing anything, and Vince decides to bring Bischoff in as an on-screen character. So you really can, that's something you got to admire, really. Like, Vince is always business first. He puts personal feelings aside, or at least he did in this case. So that's pretty much it. I think Eric here was just an on-screen character. Maybe he might have given some of his ideas and everything else, but they had employed him just as a on-screen character, playing that smarmy boss that he does so well. I always thought Eric Bischoff as a character was really, really good.
And we have another smarmy character coming up.
We do.
Don't we?
Well, now we see a backstage pre-tape with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman questions if Brock can beat the Big Show. He tells Brock that nothing's been the same since Brock's Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker the month previous. He then fires Brock Lesnar up and promises Brock that he would do everything in his power to make sure his client leaves tonight as WWE champion. Was he foreshadowing something there?
Yeah. I didn't know the Lesnar and Heyman thing went that far. My client went that far back.
Oh, Brock Lesnar debuted with Paul Heyman.
Yeah, but I didn't know that my client thing was a thing, because they still used it until relatively recently, didn't they? I thought that was the first time they used the kind of my client type of relationship. I didn't know it was from day one.
I think it was from day one, clearly. That's from amazing. Day one. Yeah. We then see a video package building up the match between Brock Lesnar, the WWE Championship match between Brock Lesnar and the Big Show. In this video package, we see Big Show. He throws The Undertaker off the stage. He throws Rey Mysterio into the crowd. He chokeslams Brock Lesnar for a table. He also throws Brock Lesnar off the stage. And we see Paul Heyman being concerned for Brock. We even hear Paul say, "You can't manhandle the Big Show. You can't beat the Big Show." So they're telling the story here that Heyman is really concerned about Brock taking on the Big Show, and Paul Heyman doesn't think Brock can beat Big Show, which is really funny because all the months leading up to this, Brock has beaten and destroyed The Rock, beaten and destroyed Undertaker, beaten and destroyed Hogan, whereas Big Show, before he got drafted to SmackDown, was just on Raw, floundering and doing jobs to mid-carders. Really, really interesting. It should be worth noting here, Paul Heyman, I want to say, was the head writer or the booker for SmackDown. And I guess it shows how good Paul Heyman was at not just booking, but bringing people in and playing to their strengths and hiding the weaknesses. Because like I said, Big Show was kind of floundering in the mid-card. He brought Big Show in, and this first month, he's just pushed super duper hard. Like I said, him beating up The Undertaker, him beating up Brock, him beating up Rey Mysterio. They really portrayed Big Show as this deadly, unstoppable force, which realistically he should be.
He would be.
The sheer size of him. So I thought this was a really interesting story. And what's funny about it is that they did such a good job of making you forget that Big Show had been jobbing before. I feel like this kind of was the story of Big Show's career, that they could have Big Show working on top, do that for a little while, and then they would bring him back down to the mid card and he would do whatever. But at any point, they could make him like a serious threat again.
Main event, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like they could do that a lot. But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that video package.
I noticed the effects on the motion graphics and effects were surprisingly low quality.
I thought that too. But
they stood out as an anomaly.
But I don't think at the time you would have thought that.
No, I actually think the rest of the packages didn't look as bad as this one. It just
Oh,
sort of
okay.
stuck out to me. And yes, obviously things are more advanced now, but I just saw it as surprisingly low quality, like something you'd imagine people could back in the day they could add to their home VHSs, their home
Right.
camcorder footage to jazz it up a bit. I also noticed that Lesnar, when he's just wearing his white track pants, was kind of a good look.
Here's the thing. I say this to wrestlers or people that want to, sometimes it's trainee wrestlers or whatnot. I'm like, you got to get good wrestling gear. John Cena can get away with wearing jean shorts because he's jacked as hell.
Yeah,
well, he's John Cena,
jacked.
he's over, but he looks
and
amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing here with Brock Lesnar. He's so massive and jacked. He's only 25 years old here, which just completely blows my mind.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah,
it is.
2002 Lesnar is unlike anything I've ever seen.
And I think just he could wear anything and he could look cool. Let's get on to the match. So WWE Championship match for the SmackDown brand. Big Show defeats Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman to win the title in 4 minutes and 19 seconds when Paul Heyman turns on Lesnar and Big Show chokeslams Brock onto a chair. This was very quick.
Well, I appreciated that because I'm not a huge fan of just Brock Lesnar or anyone really just repeatedly suplexing another big guy over and over again. So the brevity of that I appreciated. What I really liked is, and always like sometimes less is more. And I think that's why I didn't feel like the previous match, the hardcore match, could have done better being longer. I really don't think it was. And this is another one. I don't know how much more I could have seen. Yeah, I was actually happy with that duration. And obviously this is a long pay-per-view and we weren't even halfway through the actual runtime. Like the card we were, I believe, but the runtime we weren't. So this was good. This was perfect for me, in my opinion. What about you?
Well, I know I thought this is really well done. I agree with you. I think it was short but sweet, and less is more.
Yeah.
This actually kind of became the format for Brock Lesnar matches years later, where the last sort of 5 or even 10 years now with Brock Lesnar, since he came back after the UFC and was doing this whole Suplex City thing, this has kind of become a thing where Brock Lesnar would just have a 3, 4, 5-minute match and it just be boom, boom, smash, smash, smash. It's over real quick. And it's just complete chaos and highlights just for like fireworks for 3 to 4 to 5 minutes. And I think a lot of fans don't really enjoy that, but I think me personally, I really enjoy that. And it's like, it's a match with the Big Show. We don't want to see them holding a bear hug for 2 minutes, do we? You just want to, you know what I'm saying?
Worse. Yeah.
Right. There's a point in this
think
match.
Of the alternative. Yeah.
Exactly. I think shorter but sweeter. Also, Big Show's really, really big here. So I don't know if his cardio would have lent itself to a longer match. Super impressive. The F5 that Brock gives Big Show, I think is the move that people remember as being very impressive. But what I actually found way more impressive was when Brock gave Big Show the overhead belly-to-belly suplex. The
belly-to-belly, yeah.
That's a hard move to pull off.
Thing.
And I thought, wow, that was pretty damn incredible. I'm sure Big Show was crapping himself taking that move. It's an easy one to get dumped on your head. But yeah, this was really fast-paced. Big Show, throughout the years, he's changed his attire up a lot. And I feel like he could never really settle anything, at least for the first 5-10 years or so. In WCW, he had the Andre singlet. I want to say when he came into the WWE, he was wearing trunks, and then he went into kind of a leotard, and then here he's wearing the leotard but with black jeans. What did you think of Big Show's look here?
The black leotard is to me almost like a carnival strongman attire. Yeah. And I think that's what he should be wearing.
Yeah.
As that kind of towering physique. I think he should always be in that.
But I was more questioning the jeans.
Oh, no, the jeans are no.
You didn't like the jeans?
I wasn't a fan. No, I want someone like that looking like a circus strongman. Sounds like you like the jeans?
For whatever reason, I remember at the time watching this, and before he come to SmackDown, he wasn't wearing the jeans, and he was on Raw and he was doing jobs. And then he came to SmackDown, and he was this monster all of a sudden. And I was like, is his power all coming from the jeans? That's all he had to do was just put these black jeans on. It's like, now I'm a monster again. Now I'm a 7-foot giant. So I think the power came from his jeans.
I think so.
I guess we should get into the finish of this match. Brock Lesnar finally hits the F5 on Big Show, which is crazy, crazy impressive. He pins him for what we assume is the 3. 1, 2. Paul Heyman puts Big Show's leg on the ropes. Oh, he put his leg on the ropes.
We lost a referee.
He pulled the referee
and
out.
he pulled and then they're having a replacement referee slide in for the finish. And then I believe Paul Heyman pulled the replacement referee
and
out
punched
so
him.
He couldn't finish. And then, punched him. And then Paul's hat flies off like it does.
Correct. Sorry. Yes, you're right. You're right. He pulled the referee. 1, 2. He pulls the referee out.
Yep.
It's funny because the response straight away wasn't there. I think people were just so confused because I feel like at the time people didn't see this coming at all, which is funny because if you watch the build up now and you watch the video packages and the story they did into this, it was very kind of obvious.
Clues are there.
Yeah. But the crowd are kind of stunned. He's pulled out the referee, punches the referee. Brock Lesnar instantly enrages and chases Heyman, comes back into the ring, catches a choke slam onto a steel chair. 1, 2, 3. New WWE champion, The Big Show. Completely unexpected.
The looks on both of their faces were so good. Like of Lesnar. Looked like he legitimately wanted to murder Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman doing his thing. Just the reverse shot of the two after that happened was excellent. For me, I didn't have that shock and confusion. As soon as he pulled the leg away on the referee, I just thought, you dirty bastard.
It's funny because Brock Lesnar has been brought into the company as a heel, as a monster heel. They put him with Paul Heyman as his manager or whatever they call it. And of course, there's no one really better at getting heat than Paul Heyman. So they'd been having this run as heels, but Brock Lesnar, it got to the point where he was so impressive, so dominant that the people started taking to him. He had the match SummerSlam with The Rock, where people started to boo The Rock and cheer for Brock Lesnar. And it just got to the point where it's like, okay, we can't have this guy as a heel anymore. And the only really reason to boo Lesnar is the fact that he's with Heyman. But everything else, you want to cheer for the guy because he's a freak. He's incredible. Yeah. And obviously, I don't think they wanted a babyface Brock Lesnar with Heyman. Just Heyman as a babyface, I just don't think would really work.
Never work.
I thought this was so smart because I don't want to say Paul Heyman made Brock Lesnar because obviously Brock Lesnar was his own,
made himself.
But Paul Heyman definitely enhanced him a lot. So I thought it was really clever to then, okay, we can actually make an opponent for Brock Lesnar by pairing them up with Paul Heyman just to give them that legitimacy. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really, really well done. And I think they could have done it with anyone, but they've gone with the Big Show here. I thought this was a really good piece of business. I think before this, Brock Lesnar had been undefeated for 8 months or so. Of course, he was going to have to lose at some point. It might as well be to a 7-foot giant. It didn't feel like when Goldberg lost his streak in WCW, when he lost to Kevin Nash, people saw that as really bad business and a downfall. Here, I don't think whatsoever. And the loss, there was a reason for the loss, and it set up a whole bunch of other stuff. It set up sort of moving on with Brock Lesnar as a babyface that was chasing and everything else. I think he later on went to win the Royal Rumble and everything else. So I thought this is a really, really good piece of business. After the match, Big Show and Paul Heyman escape and jump into a limousine, which was pretty funny. I was actually quite impressed at how easily the Big Show fit into the limousine. I was thinking he's not going to fit in there because limousines look kind of small, right?
Cozy, yeah.
he fit right in there. But no, I thought that was a really good job with Heyman, how he foreshadowed this whole turn. Like you said, they put a lot of signs in there that this was going to happen. That line, like, I'm going to make sure well, I'm going to guarantee that my client will leave tonight as a WWE champion, which it technically did because now, we know Big Show must be his client. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, and his acting is always like he always gives 100%, and he's always in character 100%, which I really like. Just the way, like you said, when they escape, and he's just a snake who's shitting himself the entire time, just like running, just wants to get out of there. It's so funny.
I don't know Paul Heyman well at all. I've met him a few times, but I think a lot of people say that, you know, this sort of the character that he plays on TV now is kind of similar to how he is in real life. So maybe it's easy for him to do because he's just an absolute. I mean, people are giving their flowers to Heyman now. He's obviously doing this incredible stuff with the Bloodline, and he's a real, you know, the highlight of WWE. And the Bloodline ratings have been going through the roof. This is a hot angle, this Bloodline thing, which has been going on for the last 2 or 3 years. And of course, Paul Heyman's at the heart of it. So he really is an amazing performer, one of the greatest talkers of all time. I think you could argue in terms of best managers of all time, you could look at almost talented managers of all time. I think Paul Heyman and Bobby the Brain Heenan, at this point, they might be neck and neck because Heyman is just incredible.
He is. He's so enjoyable. Every time he's on screen, you have to watch. He's a good actor as well. Have you noticed that? Do you think he is? I think he is. I think he's underrated as an actor, yeah.
He looks like he could be in, what sort of movie would you put him in? He kind of look like a Scarface or something.
Yeah, he'd be some sort of, I think he would, do you know what's funny is he would probably be playing the same character, just some kind of betraying sleaze guy in a Tarantino movie or something. Is that where you'd put him?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Next up, we see a video package for the Tag Team Championship match. In the video package, we see Benoit and Kurt Angle win the tournament to be crowned the first ever SmackDown Tag Team Championships. We see highlights of them playing the odd couple, like we spoke about earlier, a tag team that doesn't get on. We also see highlights of a 2 out of 3 falls match between Edge teaming up with Rey Mysterio against Benoit and Angle, which Edge and Rey won. Then we see Dawn Marie and Al Wilson in the crowd, sat at ringside. I'm assuming you don't know who Al Wilson is.
Did she marry Tori Wilson's dad or something like that?
That was the story. I'm not sure she married him or not, but the storyline was
something like that.
She got with Tori Wilson's dad. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, 2002. It's very funny. We're about to see something like the next match we're about to see, which is like really amazing in-ring work, but they still were having these really funky storylines and gimmicks.
Bizarre, yeah, really.
This was the year 2002. They did the whole Katie Vick thing, which I'm sure we'll probably get to at some point. But here was another one. In storyline, Al Wilson died or something. It was all kind of a little distasteful.
Didn't he die on when they were, what's the word, like consummating the wedding? Like,
yeah, I think they actually like screwed him to death or something.
Yeah, something like that. So ridiculous.
So next up is a WWE Tag Team Championship Triple Threat Elimination match. The Los Guerreros, Eddie and Chavo, defeat Edge and Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit to win the titles in 19 minutes and 25 seconds when Eddie taps out Rey with their El Paso Lasso. Also, Edge and Mysterio eliminated Angle and Benoit before this, but the Guerreros pick up the win. First thing I noticed about this at the start of the match, a lot of signs suggesting that the Guerreros mow lawns or mow my lawn. Eddie and Chavo mow my lawn. Did you see those signs?
I didn't see them.
There was quite a lot of them. Yeah. Okay. That was a thing. I'll also say Kurt Angle got a massive pop when he came out. They still do the "you suck" chants, but he gets a massive pop. So he's clearly the most over guy in this match, I want to say. Yeah. And also Edge, he looks very 2000s here with his entrance jacket and his sunglasses.
Yeah, didn't he look like that for a while?
He did. I think this was a point when Edge he finished the team with Christian, yeah. Edge and Christian was a pretty successful team, and then he'd won the King of the Ring, I want to say the year previous to this, and they were trying Edge out as a babyface, and he was kind of in this role for quite a number of years, and he never really found his spot. He was always kind of that like baby face with lots of potential, like, oh, he's going to be a main eventer in the future. And he never really found that place until he turned heel and did the whole rated R superstar. So this was him kind of being almost like a white meat baby face. This incarnation of Edge, I wasn't really a massive fan of.
No.
I knew he was a good wrestler, and his team with Rey Mysterio, I thought was great because I obviously loved Rey Mysterio. And the SmackDown 6, these guys were called, that obviously was a sort of insider's term. But the idea is that Paul Heyman was booking his shows around these 6 wrestlers, and these 6 wrestlers were kind of the future of the company. But yeah, Edge, I always kind of found him a bit out of place here. Like I said, I don't think he found his groove till years later with this rated R stuff. Rey Mysterio looked super jacked here. I forgot how big.
Yeah, I know.
How big and cut Rey Mysterio was here, huh? Jeez.
Yeah, for his size, he's just solid. He's just absolutely stacked.
Yeah, for a guy that's like 5'4", he looks incredible.
Yeah, no, he did. And the degree of talent in this match. I mean, Chris Benoit is insane. Literally, but I mean, like, you know, metaphorically too. Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero is probably in my opinion, one of the best ever.
He's like one of my favorites.
Rey
Mysterio. Two of my favorite wrestlers of all time. My 3 favorite wrestlers, I'd say, were Bret Hart, Rey Mysterio, and Eddie Guerrero. 2 of them in this match.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Yeah, this was a super good match.
You enjoyed this?
Should we save our favorites till the end, or like this was my favorite match of the night?
So maybe I've got a critical eye today. It's funny. These guys had quite a long program, and they did lots of different versions of this match where, you know, it'd be Los Guerreros versus Edge and Mysterio, or I know Edge and Mysterio worked with Angle and Benoit a lot, and they might have done another one of these matches as well. But these guys were always working in matches together. I actually feel like this was one of the weaker ones. The two out
of the night, or
of their series of matches. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. There was a 2 out of 3 falls match with Edge and Mysterio against Kurt Angle and Benoit, which was amazing. This one, I felt like it was not as good as a lot of the other matches that these 6 guys would have with each other. But at the same time, it was still pretty cool to watch them in the ring. And freeway tags are hard to do, to be fair.
I think you're certainly going to have to do it for me. Can you even explain the rules of this triple tag elimination? Because one team was like tagging in another team, and if I wanted to win, I just wouldn't tag in the other team, so they could never win. I had no idea what was going on.
But if you don't tag them in, they can never get beaten down and taken out, can they? Really?
No.
But you do raise a good point, because you probably noticed quite a few times in this match, people would tag themselves in. You know, they'd be walking near them, they'd tag themselves in. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of easy to understand, but never really works that well. I have seen other like triple threat tag matches where the rules are a guy from each team is in the ring. So it's almost like a triple threat match, but you can tag out.
Triple threat tag team match.
Right. This one is two guys in, and you can tag anyone. Again, there's no actual WWE rule book. A lot of this stuff changes. I remember one time they did a 4-way tag team match where I want to say the Outlaws are in it, and someone tagged in Billy Gunn, so he was in there, and then someone tagged Road Dogg. So then it was Road Dogg and Billy Gunn both in the ring, essentially having to fight each other, even though they were on the same team. And maybe they tried to cover each other. Really confusing.
This match, then, like, maybe it does make sense on paper, but I felt like the rules of the game in the match itself was kind of hard to read. Like you said, when they're tagging themselves in and others.
I think it's easy enough. I just don't. It's just hard to get a flow and tell a good story with this. I think it's hard to. I'm not a big fan of 3-ways and 4-ways, and then, like I said, a 3-way tag. It's always kind of just like, like what kind of story can you tell with this? It makes it very difficult. That being said, they did do a really, really good job here. Lots of high spots, lots of big pops. I think at one point they put maybe Mysterio in the Crippler Crossface and an ankle lock, which got a massive reaction. The action is fast and furious. Clearly, these guys were working with each other a lot, probably a lot on the house shows as well. So they've got really, really good chemistry together.
I noticed that, especially with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, I mean, those guys have
So
worked together for years. Did you notice Rey Mysterio keep adjusting his mask constantly? I feel like this mask was maybe too big for him because he was moving it constantly.
Well, I noticed that I can't remember if he got Irish whipped or he was just like leaning the ropes and went to go forward, but he kind of like caught his own head on the top rope.
Oh, it was so bad.
Yeah, and I wondered if I didn't notice him adjusting his mask before he did that, but maybe he was. I wondered if that was to do with it. But yeah, what the hell happened there? He decapitated himself.
You just hit the ropes wrong. I mean, Ray is super short, obviously, 5'4", 5. You know, I assume the WWE top rope is pretty high, and if you just lean back too much, you know,
went over the top, and brought him back. So I thought maybe that affected his. It did, like it give you whiplash or something. But I thought maybe that was what affected his mask. But do you think maybe just his mask around that time was just not a good fit for him?
I think that particular mask, it could have been a case of because it was a certain material, you know, it's that kind of like a tiger print or something, like a brown tiger print, and maybe it was made out of a different material. I'm just, you know, assuming stuff here, but maybe it was made out of velvet or something as opposed to maybe pleather or whatever, and the size ended up being different because of it, because it seemed like he was adjusting it constantly. So I can only assume that the mask was a little too big. There's been numerous matches where Mysterio has been adjusting his mask a lot when he's had a particular mask. One that comes to mind is his WrestleMania match with Eddie Guerrero, and the whole match he's adjusting his mask. It kind of takes away, because obviously he pretty much gets a new mask every match he has, it seems. Yeah. So some of them, I guess, will be built differently.
Better than others, yeah.
So the finish here was kind of a funny one, because the idea is that Rey Mysterio hits the 619, and whilst he's on the apron, Chavo hits him with the belt. He then goes back into the ring, and Eddie puts him in the El Paso Lasso, I think it's called. I thought it was called
from El Paso.
That's what I thought it was called.
Oh, well, are we wrong? Are we both wrong?
I saw it written down here as the El Paso Lasso, so I don't know. To get to that spot, Edge throws Chavo out the ring where he wants Chavo to be. I'm assuming near the belts as well. Then, so he shows him the side he wants it to be. Then Eddie comes in from behind on Edge. Boom. He takes a punch from Edge, and he kind of goes to fall in position for the 619. But Edge kind of punches him again, and obviously wanted to do some kind of spot or an Irish whip or drop toe hold into the ropes. So Edge punches him, Eddie kicks him, he goes to Irish whip Edge, expecting Edge to reverse, but Edge kind of doesn't. So they separate, and then Edge regroups. He then grabs Eddie again to Irish whip him, but Eddie just kind of falls in place for the 619, but on the opposite side of the ring, which obviously they can't be because they need to be on the same side as Chavo is for the finish.
To be able to break it, yeah.
So then he kind of feeds up again and kind of rolls to the other side of the ring, and then Edge just kind of like places him on the ropes where he needs to be, rather than taking like a nice drop toe hold on the rope or a hurricanrana onto the rope. So they were kind of not on the same page with this, and it was kind of a bit of a fluff to kind of get to this finish, a bit of a botch into the finish. I mean, they recovered well, and I don't think a lot of people would have even really noticed, but just being a wrestler, I can see, I can see what's happened there. Like they're on a different page, and they need to be in that one position for this spot. And it's actually quite funny. Come to think about it, all wrestling fans have their opinions on wrestling, and they're entitled to them. And I hear them talking about work rate or even psychology or gimmicks or characters. Us actual wrestlers, one thing that we talk about a lot with each other, or one thing that we appreciate as being very important, is positioning. I never hear fans talk about positioning. Positioning is a really important aspect of pro wrestling. One of the most important things is positioning. And, you know, that is something you would compliment someone on, like, his positioning is really good, or you position really well. Actually, maybe I should say it's less something that you would compliment someone and more something you would berate someone for having bad positioning. You know, like your positioning was all over the place. Where were you, etc., etc.
So that's fundamental, is it?
Yes, yeah, and it's really important. If someone's got bad positioning, it can ruin a whole entire match completely, and it can be dangerous as well. But yeah, this positioning here was a little all over the place to get into this 619. And then, yeah, he went into the submission, the Paso from El Lasso, which I always thought was a pretty cool submission.
Whether it's the lasso from El Paso or the El Paso lasso. Yeah, it looks good. I actually didn't know that was that actually his finisher. I always thought it was the frog splash, and that was just like more of a little trademark that he does. But I could be wrong.
His finish is the frog splash. I think this was a finish that he tried to get over for a little while, which he would bust out from time to time. Obviously, he tried it here. The reaction definitely would have been a lot better if he did the frog splash. But that's the thing. When you're trying to get a new finish over, you kind of have to sacrifice some finishes where you're not going to get the desired reaction that you want because the people don't know the move. So the first few times you do it, people will kind of be like, oh, what? That's the finish? But you do it enough, then people, you condition the fans, you educate them. Oh, this is a finish. So if he hits it again, oh, it's going to be the finish because you've seen it be the finish before. So yeah, I think the frog splash might have worked better here, but at the same time, I'm not going to give critique or wrestling advice to Eddie Guerrero, the greatest wrestler of all time. I think I'll just shut my mouth here.
I think so.
But this was also kind of the start of Eddie and Chavo's big push, and they would go on to do the lie, cheating, stealing, the low rider. They had the vignettes of them doing the different cheating, different stealing, everything else.
We lie, we cheat, we steal.
We lie, we cheat, we steal. One of my favorite gimmicks of all time. And it's funny because they're heels here, and it wouldn't be too much longer after this. They turn into like the biggest baby faces. I thought it was such a great babyface gimmick. It's actually kind of what I took a lot of inspiration from this lie, cheating, stealing gimmick for the villain, and how I can make the villain a babyface. So yeah, I owe a lot to Eddie Guerrero and Chavo.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have anything else to say about the match itself? Because I didn't actually notice that your critique about the end. I watched it twice, for God's sakes.
It was pretty much everything you would expect. High impact, lots of action. These are all veterans. They all know what they're doing. They've all worked together a whole bunch of times. It was going to be great, and of course it was. It's exactly what you'd expect. The King says that every title match so far, the titles have changed hands. We just saw the Guerreros win the tag team championships. We saw Billy Kidman win the Cruiserweight championship earlier. We also saw Victoria win the women's title. Was that everything? I think it was, right?
There's no title at the start, right? On the tables.
No.
So there's nothing. Yeah. So
the tables champion. That does sound like a Russo-esque booking. Like, we're going to make a tables champion.
It does. Don't give him any ideas.
Tables championship match. Maybe if I run a company again one day, I'll have a tables championship match. Because half the time now you watch wrestling and the fans aren't even cheering for the wrestler or cheering for the good guy. They're saying, we want tables. We want tables. So maybe give them the tables championship. I mean, I guess the Dudley Boys are kind of the uncrowned tables champions. Or Sabu, maybe the tables champion.
He's the tables. Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's ask you guys listening, who would you crown as the tables champion? Tables champion. We should do a poll. Yeah, who would it be? The Dudley Boys?
Yep.
Sabu?
Yep.
Who else used a lot of tables?
I think those two are good. Or as the wild card, we have Spike Dudley for just going through so many in such a nasty way, and then other. Please but it's got to be Sabu, though, hasn't it?
I think so.
Well, let's not affect the poll. Hey,
it's not your choice, Sam.
All right. Yeah, the tables championship, that would be funny. That reminds me, I hope one day we get to talk, and we will get to talk about the 24/7 hardcore championship. But that's what that reminds me of. But we'll get the
24/7 hardcore championship, not the later 24/7 championship belt.
Not that, the hardcore one.
Exactly.
We've got to talk about that.
Strong opinions of.
I bet you do.
So King says all the titles have changed. Is that foreshadowing? Will we see a new WWE champion tonight in the Elimination Chamber? Who knows? The odds aren't really in Triple H's favor, being 6 men in the Elimination Chamber. But anyway, up next, we have a Chris Nowinski and Matt Hardy in-ring promo. It seemed to come a little out of nowhere. I assume they were maybe getting stuff ready for the Elimination Chamber. But Nowinski and Hardy debate on if New York is full of stupid people or losers. And you kind of think, where is this going? At first, it seems like Matt Hardy is defending the people of New York and is going to do a babyface promo. But then he quickly says, no, I don't disagree. I don't think they're stupid. I think they're losers. And I think they even come up with the term loopid, a cross between stupid and losers. Then, boom, the sirens hit. Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, makes his debut. He makes his way to the ring and he makes quick work of Nowinski and Hardy with suplexes. He gets on the mic. Another thing that WWE cut off for Peacock, another thing that this show is kind of famous for. In the real pay-per-view, in real time, Scott Steiner, he beats up Matt Hardy, he beats up Chris Nowinski, and he screams, "Give me the fucking mic!" Just drops an F-bomb on his WWE debut in true Scott Steiner fashion.
As only he, yeah, exactly, as only he could.
That was cut from Peacock. Crying out loud, Peacock, why'd you keep cutting everything out? He gets on the microphone, he hits his catchphrases, crowd goes nuts. This was just a segment basically to introduce Scott Steiner to the company. Steiner was another wrestler, I spoke about them earlier, that was sitting out his Time Warner contract. I don't know if you understand that. So basically, a lot of the main eventers in WCW didn't have contracts with WCW. They had contracts with Time Warner. So when WCW ended, some of them still had a year or even 2 years left on their deals. And it was a case of, okay, I'm entitled to this money. Do I sit this contract out and basically get paid loads of money to sit at home? Or do I basically cancel this contract to go work for the WWE, which probably would have been less money for obviously a lot more work? So the majority of them sat their contracts out. I want to say the only people that didn't were Booker T and DDP, but everyone else, Goldberg and NWO, all those guys sat their contracts out. But this was Scott Steiner was in the WWF back in 1994 with the Steiner brothers. They had, I want to say, like a year run where they'd left WCW and came to the WWF and won the tag team titles. But this was obviously Scott Steiner in his Big Papa Pump, the big bad booty daddy persona. This was a lot of fun. I remember at the time being really excited to see Scott Steiner in the WWE. What do you think of this, Sam?
So I really, really love this entire segment. Just really quickly, I don't know who. Okay, I nearly said Chris Lewinsky. Chris Nowinski, not to be confused with Monica Lewinsky. In case people worried that we are stuck in the 90s, I just bring up Monica Lewinsky. Just really quickly, so Chris Nowinski.
Chris Nowinski, he was another contestant or a runner-up on season 1 of Tough Enough, where Nowinski is most well known for. Well, first of all, his Harvard gimmick, that's a shoot. He generally graduated from Harvard University. That's why he's got this Harvard University graduate persona. He only wrestled in the WWE for, I want to say, a couple of years. He then had to retire early because of a concussion when he ended the Royal Rumble and he took a double drop kick from Rey Mysterio and Edge. And I want to say they mistimed it and Edge landed on Chris Nowinski's face and gave him a really bad concussion. So he ended up leaving because of this concussion. And then years later, he ended up becoming basically, he got like a PhD in behavioral neuroscience and became like a concussion expert. I think especially after the whole Chris Benoit stuff happened. He wrote a book called Head Games, which is basically about concussions in football. He got loads of media attention. I think he was kind of outspoken out against the WWE at the time as well. He would go on a lot of these shows and talk about sort of the severity of concussions and everything else. And he's still doing it to this day, to the point where he is actually quite often used for seminars for wrestling companies. I actually attended one of them. Ring of Honor brought him in once, quite a few hours before the show, to all do a seminar with Chris Nowinski, which was about concussions and basically, talking about, because for so long, no one really knew, people knew what concussions were, but didn't realize how dangerous they were, or how no one really knew about anything like CTE, which is very evident from all the unprotected chair shots that we've seen even in week 2 of this show. So Nowinski's done a really good job of raising awareness about concussions, how dangerous they can be. I remember in the seminar, he would do a lot of talking and he would show different clips, and he would show a clip of, oh, this is Taz hitting someone in the head with a chair. Like, this is a concussion, showing us the different signs. If someone's had a concussion, basically telling us, obviously, if something like this happens, you need to stop there and then, because if you do more damage to it or you get rocked again, it's really, really dangerous. So Chris Nowinski's legacy in the wrestling business, I think, would be that he's tried to leave it as a better place with all this awareness for concussions. So Chris Nowinski
done that as well.
Hell of a guy. Yeah, I think he really has. And I think he's implemented a lot of different rules now with wrestling companies where if people are concussed, they take it very seriously rather than, oh, toughen up and see it through.
Yeah,
which is the old attitude.
Yeah, well, I just said, oh, quickly, just tell me about the Chris. I didn't know he had that much of an arc and that much of a legacy. So that's awesome. I didn't know any of that.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like his real world education and his incident that he had, it all just, so he's got the experience and the education, and he seems like he's just like the exact person to do the role that he's doing now. So it has a really, I guess, happy ending to it, really good ending. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm reading here. It says that he founded the Concussion Legacy Foundation. I did it again.
You've done it again. That's twice now.
Everything is federation. I've got WWF on the brain. So he founded the Concussion Legacy Foundation, the CLF, and basically it's to do medical research on sort of brain trauma in sports, because he believes that concussions have become a public health crisis. So yeah, Chris Nowinski, hell of a guy. I got to meet him, seemed like a really nice guy, and obviously wants the working conditions for wrestlers to be better. And obviously we've seen a lot of stuff happen in wrestling over the years and years, and a lot of wrestlers dying young and a lot of wrestlers having issues with concussions. And it's sad. And having a concussion is not fun. I've been very fortunate in my career, touch wood. I think I've only had 1, maybe 2 concussions, and they're not fun at all. And I would say, for the most part, my style of wrestling is a quite safe style. I don't do these hardcore matches. I'm not doing high flying, all that kind of stuff. That being said, wrestling is never safe. It's a dangerous sport. You know what it is when you get into it. But when I see what some of the guys do, and especially back here with the unprotected chair shots and everything else to the head, and some of the bumps that guys take now, I'm just like, what are you doing?
Please.
Like I got the same reaction, or I get the same reaction breaking someone's finger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that I don't actually break it, but doing something so simple like that, it gets an amazing reaction. You can do stuff like that. You don't need to, I don't know, do a Canadian destroyer from the top rope to the floor. You don't need to bash a guy's brains in with a steel chair or any of this stuff. I think, okay, I get there's a time and place for that stuff, but knowing what we know about concussions now, that is something that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. So I just think
it doesn't seem like a worthy trade-off.
It doesn't. And the risks that people take. And I feel like now it's even worse because everyone's so desperate we're in this kind of social media era where people want to be in GIFs, or they want to be on a reel or be tweeted, whatever it is. So they're doing these crazy stunts, these big moves, just to kind of get that attraction. And it works. People do something crazy and it will go all over the internet. But at the same time, to me, maybe I'm just a coward, but I don't think it's worth it. I
don't think it's worth it at all. No. And and thanks, Chris. We like Chris.
I'm sure he's watching.
So back to the actual promo and the actual question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel. I wonder if we're going to have different opinions. But so easy, cheap heat, when it's harmless, for me, I think is perfect. I love this kind of thing.
There's a time and a place for it. I feel here was a good case of a good time, because these guys weren't doing an angle together or anything else. It wasn't to further a storyline. It was just, this was a promo just as sort of an instrument to get to the Scott Steiner debut. So here, I think it's fine. I'm not against Cheap Heat at all. I just, again, I think there's a time and a place. They did a pretty good job at winding the crowd up. The truth is, 9 times out of 10, that Cheap Heat or running down the town's or the city's sports team, it always seems to get a reaction. People want to boo that. So,
I sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Steiner is just looking ridiculously jacked here.
He looks like what I would make around that time in the creator wrestler. Like if I was a kid and I was playing the game and I created a wrestler, it would look like Scott Steiner, just like impossible muscles.
Yeah,
he looks like a joke.
It's
got another bicep on top of it.
Just the veins and just going back to the Cheap Heat.
He looks like he's inflated, like a blow up. Like it's insane.
There was something I wanted to say about the Cheap Heat thing. I think it's so funny, like I said, how it always works. And it's like they could just come out and they essentially go, "You guys are losers." Like, boo. Like, that's it. Like, you're losers. That gets people wound up. It's kind of like going back to X-Pac last week. Like, Hulk Hogan, you suck, pal. You guys are losers. Boo. You guys are stupid. Boo. But yes, sorry, Scott Steiner. I got to give Scott Steiner the respect he deserves. He looks absolutely insane here. He transformed himself from the Steiner brothers days. He, obviously cut his hair, dyed his hair, got the blonde, goatee and everything else. I guess kind of gone for this Jesse Ventura type. Sorry, not Jesse Ventura. Superstar Billy Graham look is what he's gone for here. I assume that WWE brought Steiner in here with the mindset that he would go on to be a big star for them and to be a main eventer for WWE. Didn't really work out. In fact, it didn't work out at all. His first sort of big match, he does a championship match with Triple H. He'd been feuding with Triple H. They actually had kind of a fun program where they did like a bodybuilding contest and everything else. But they had the match at the Royal Rumble, I guess in 2003, January 2003. The match is long and doesn't really go well. I think Steiner had a lot of nagging injuries at the time, which kind of slowed him down a lot. So he had this championship match with Triple H, and I think it might have got voted like the worst match of the year and everything else. And then that was the Royal Rumble. By WrestleMania, which was however long later, Steiner's not even on the show. He's not even on the pay-per-view. So not long after his kind of failed run, they had to turn him heel, fell really into the mid-card. They had him as a heel tag team with Test for a bit. Then they broke up and Steiner feuded with Test. So it was kind of it was a long, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a long divorce, it was gone out.
Well, I was saying we're very far away from what he was in WCW.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like the
WCW,
juxtaposition of where he was in one promotion versus the other.
Yes.
The gulf there is, yeah.
And at the time, it made me really mad. Now looking back, you understand it. I completely understand it. But looking back, like DDP and Scott Steiner, both heavy hitters in WCW, both main eventers. Then they come to WWE and they're mid-card at best. At the time, it made me really angry. Like, why are they not pushing the WCW guys? It's because they hate WCW. But I guess you look back and you kind of understand where things went wrong and everything else. And if Steiner had a lot of these injuries, he'd obviously taken a good year or two off wrestling after WCW finished. So I guess he wasn't all there in the ring. And also, I do wonder about this. WWE was very sort of scripted with the promos. And I'm assuming Steiner didn't fall very well into these scripted promos. I feel like Scott Steiner's going to say
he likes doing his own thing, right?
Right. Well, I assume so. I don't know him personally, but as evident from him dropping the F-bomb as soon as he got in the ring. So, but it was a shame that his WWE run never worked out.
Yeah.
But
he looked insane.
It was cool as well. They had
so big.
Either his WCW music or maybe it's like a version of it. But the crowd, I feel like there's this perception that WWE, I remember listening to Bruce Pritchard's podcast and he said a lot about, our fans didn't know who the WCW wrestlers were. Like they absolutely did. when Scott Steiner comes out here, the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
And even if
That
they
was
didn't know him,
that was proof of it. Yeah.
if you saw him, you're going to cheer for him, right? You're like, look at this guy.
With his chainmail.
Absolutely. Next up, Eric Bischoff comes to the ring and enters the Elimination Chamber for a promo. He goes over the rules of the match and puts the whole thing over. He's got like a pipe in his hand that he's hitting the Elimination Chamber with. From all accounts of the guys in this match, apparently none of them saw this structure, the Elimination Chamber, to the day of the show. And they said they got in there, I guess before the show started, and instantly realized that this Elimination Chamber was not built by someone that knows how to wrestle, because it was apparently stiff and hard and dangerous and sharp as hell. The chains, because we've seen the steel cage that WWE has now, it's just kind of like fencing. So it's got a lot of give to it. This is as actual chains, and they're very tight.
Yeah, and they're taut and they don't go anywhere. Yeah.
They don't go anywhere. So apparently this was just near impossible to working. The steel floor that they had apparently was hard as nails. There's a few points in this match where you see kind of close-ups of it, and it looks like sharp as well. It looks so dangerous.
I thought they may have coated it with that plastic. You know, sometimes you see chains and they're coated in plastic because it's black, like the color is black. But no, I don't think it was. I think it was literally just the steel, straight up.
Yeah, they made a lot of changes to the Elimination Chamber over the years, but this first one, they said it was just an absolute disaster to work in. Apparently, this Elimination Chamber structure cost $250,000 to make, which I thought was pretty insane, especially because they made it and they didn't get it right the first time. They had to make other ones. So I don't know if they made adjustments to this one or if they just started again, but it is a pretty impressive structure, I think.
Yes, yeah, it looks good. Like it translates well.
I think, if you're a fan, you see that like, oh, what's this? It looks like something out of Mad Max or something.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah,
really
that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah,
it does.
Thunderdome. Yeah.
But yeah, Eric Bischoff just come out to basically explain the rules of the match. I thought the whole thing was kind of easy to understand anyway, but I thought it was kind of nice for them to try and explain it before getting into it, because that's another thing as well. When you're doing a wrestling match, you always want the audience to understand the story. And if there's something they're confused about, it's going to be a real disconnect. So they absolutely wanted to make sure the crowd understood it. And I've always heard that one of Vince's biggest rules is like, never assume, like don't assume the fans know. You always need to explain. Don't assume they watched last week. Don't assume they know who this wrestler is. So I think it's always a good idea to, especially with a new concept like this, to explain it. I think before every match, really, you want to explain it. Like this match could be won by pinfall or submission or whatever it might be. I think that's always, because that's how you gain new fans, So
it's always going to be somebody's first time watching.
Yes.
Somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we get into it for the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber match, the first ever Elimination Chamber. Shawn Michaels defeats Triple H, Kane, Chris Jericho, Booker T, and Rob Van Dam to win the world title in 22 minutes and 53 seconds with the sweet chin music on Triple H. Now, there is a lot to uncover on this match. A lot. First of all, Jericho makes his entrance to Saliva performing his song, but not in the arena, but playing live at the World.
From the World.
So it's this song that Jericho used for a while, The King of My World. I'm the king of my world. Something like that. It's not a scratch on the Jericho's Break the Walls Down music, which is a fantastic entrance music. Yeah. So probably one of Jericho's weaker entrance musics, but they play live at the World. Interesting concept. They're really trying to get over the World here, huh? Really badly. Yeah,
they are. I was thinking of that from a technical production sort of. You're going from one to the other in real time on TV. Two different I know they're both in New York, but still two different locations. It must have just been an absolute headache. So yeah, it was a bad entrance. The entrance music wasn't as good as what it could, what it has been. But from just a production standpoint, I just thought that was nuts. I just couldn't stop thinking about it.
I thought the exact same thing. I thought it was very adventurous. Would you say it worked or not?
What, for Chris?
Just the entrance. Did you let them doing the performance live at the World while he's coming out at MSG?
Imagine if you like Chris Jericho and you like the band Saliva and you're watching live back in 2002. It must have been awesome to see. It didn't work for me personally, just because, like you said, we like the original song. I think it was a risk that, in my opinion, paid off, because at the time, for me, it was novel enough. Like, they've had Motorhead do Triple H's live. You know, they've had that thing in the
they've done that before. Yeah,
but that's always been, from my point, like, I believe I'm right, but maybe I'm wrong. They've always just been kind of live on stage in the same area,
yes,
cutting back and forth. But I've never seen it from two different locations live on the same night. So for me, it worked from a pure. It was impressive. Maybe not for Chris compared to his old song, but I liked it. I like that they did that.
Well, you say it worked, but it was the first and last time they ever did it. So
the two guys who started, which was RVD and Triple H, they came in. They had their entrances last, right? Because it's like last in, first out. I noticed that. So RVD came in before Triple H, and while Triple H was entering, and he's got his music, he's got his lights, and we all know what he does, and he does his bit in the ring. While he was doing his bit in the ring, still his lights, RVD was just like flexing and doing his side splits and stuff right there. And I found that kind of disrespectful. You know, while someone's doing their entrance, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but if someone is doing their entrance, I wouldn't try and do I wouldn't start going, oh, do you want to see my side splits again? What's your thought on that? If you were doing a killer entrance and then somebody was trying to do their little bit during your entrance, how would you feel?
I didn't notice it. I feel like Rob Van Dam's going to do whatever Rob Van Dam wants. He said the same sort of thing about Steiner. I think Van Dam's kind of a free spirit. I'm pretty sure Triple H and Rob Van Dam at the time, or the time during this, didn't really think too much of each other. I don't think they were big fans of each other. So it might have been that. Honestly, it could have just been a case of Van Dam just needing to stretch and not really thinking about it. But yeah, ideally, you're doing your entrance. You don't really want anyone else doing something or taking the eyes off you.
Right.
So go on, sorry.
I was going to say, and then when they were all in, the referee, he closed the door, and they made a big hoo-ha about, oh, they're locked in, there's this massive chamber. And the chamber is formidable. It's an incredible piece of, not machinery, but it's an incredible construct. And then they lock them in with the tiniest metal pin that's like for somebody's garden shed, in the tiniest little lock. And first of all, did you notice that? Like how small the pin was? Because then, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but somebody got thrown into it and it's completely busted open. And a referee, for the rest of the entire thing, they're building up how formidable this chamber is. It was just, they're all 6 of these guys were just held in by a junior referee just holding it closed.
I didn't notice how small the pin was, until it came flying open really early on in the match. So, they built up this, they're trapped in this chamber. There's nowhere to go, nowhere to escape. Just broke straight away. They're trapped
because this guy's just leaning on it. Oh, we can't. Okay, well, we're stuck in here, guys. We're going to have to fight to the death.
What I will say about the Elimination Chamber, really cool concept, really cool looking structure. Here's the thing with the chamber, there's not a whole lot of different stuff you can really do with it. So obviously you can run them into the chains or the cage, like you can a steel cage match. But other than that, other than like jumping off the actual chamber pods themselves or being thrown through the pods, which obviously we saw, I think, a couple of times this match, there's not a whole lot else you can really do with it, because you can't climb the thing and like escape out the top. You can't climb the top and jump off. We saw a cool spot early on when Van Dam, I want to say, jumped off the ropes and landed on the chains, kind of like Spider-Man almost. They
like a monkey.
Right. He did that. He did they did a bunch of bumps on the metal floor. He did the rolling, what's it called? The rolling thunder over the ropes onto it. And it kind of felt like they exhausted the different elements they could do pretty early on in the match. There's not a whole lot of stuff with the actual structure. With the concept, there's some cool stuff they can do with it, because obviously it's who's going to come in next. It's kind of a surprise. I like the way they do it with the lights. And the music, which I think they changed here. I was like, oh, I don't remember that being the music for the pods counting down to open. But the concept, they can do some cool stuff with. But the cage itself, there's not really a whole lot of innovative stuff they can do.
Yeah, you're completely right. So, and actually, so the outside is just an equivalent to when they're outside the ring anyway, just taking bumps onto the concrete, right? It's fundamentally the same. What you mentioned about getting on top, sorry, I just spat. Here's saliva. When they get on top of the pods to jump off, they actually have less verticality than they would if they jumped off of the cage because they're domed in. So, for example, RVD ends up doing what I would call a 5 frog splash because he wasn't able to do a star shape. That's not star shape, but like this. It was just you don't have the verticality, so it was everything was gimped. So yes, and I think that is actually, you said it yourself, it does seem to be designed by somebody who has an eye for spectacle, but not an eye for, they don't know what it's like to actually be in those conditions working.
Absolutely. I mean, you brought it up, so we might as well get to it. So Rob Van Dam climbs up on top of the pod. He tries to do a frog splash onto Triple H, but here's the problem. He can't fully stand up on the pod.
No,
because the cage is above him.
Crouched in, yeah.
Right. So he's kind of crouched in. So, and I want to say maybe Triple H was too close. I'm not sure. But he basically kind of just like falls off the cage. But I don't know if you know this, but because the guys in this match kind of consider the whole thing a disaster because there's a few really bad things that happen. And this is one of them. When Van Dam comes down, his knee crushes Triple H's throat.
I was going to ask, I'm glad you brought this up. Was that real? Because Triple H was just nursing his throat the whole time to the point where I was like, oh, maybe that's actually happened.
Apparently, it like crushed his throat and he couldn't breathe or anything. And it's completely remarkable that he managed to finish this match and continue. Yeah, live. I can't remember exactly what happened to his throat, but I know he went to the hospital that night and he wanted to leave and they were like, no, you need to stay here overnight because if you don't, you might die. So it was a pretty serious injury. It probably messed him up. And it was pretty early in the match.
Yeah,
and Triple H is obviously going to be there towards the end. So yeah, I think they've fixed the chambers now where people can jump off them a lot more easier, but obviously they hadn't thought about this then. I feel like there was a perception then back then. I don't know if this is true or not, but like where Triple H thought that Rob Van Dam wasn't a good wrestler or good worker. And maybe this as well. I was thinking, like maybe this enhanced it as well. Because obviously it wasn't Van Dam's fault, but Triple H might have thought, oh, look, I've got hurt from Van Dam now. Bloody ECW
Proving
wrestler.
my point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say this as well. No one ever brings this point up. So Van Dam, I know he came in, a year earlier than this, 2001. But no one really gives Van Dam credit for just how much in the deep end he came in and got over straight away. He came in from ECW, which I know had its fanfare, but it was a smaller company. It wasn't WWF and it wasn't WCW. He came into WWF, wasn't in a developmental territory or anything else. He came in, and this is 2001, when there's all the top stars of the WWF and a bunch of the top stars from WCW. Right, so we've got Steve Austin, Triple H, Undertaker, The Rock, all these guys, Kurt Angle, and then guys from WCW as well. Van Dam came in pretty much straight away in the main event and just as over as anyone else at a time when the talent was so hot. And I don't think people realized that how kind of crazy that was, considering he was just from this smaller company, came in and straight away was a big hit. So yeah, I mean, I remember at the time just loving Rob Van Dam. But yeah, he does the frog splash. He kind of destroys Triple H. We spoke about this earlier. He gives the frog splash, gets up, and then takes like a missile drop kick from Booker T and is eliminated. This seemed kind of flat. Didn't you think so?
Yes, it did. Just before we get to that, because I've got something to say before he gets eliminated, or I said it earlier, I made the comment that RVD carried the first third of the match, and you didn't seem like you may have agreed with that.
No, I mean, he was there. Well, typically
He
in
was
these
more
matches,
than there.
yeah, but this is how it works. Like, if you're getting eliminated first, you're going to do all the heavy lifting before you get eliminated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The other guys are going to be there towards the end. They're not going to do everything at the start because they've got to carry the rest of the match. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that does make sense.
You get
the
highlight
spectacle of it. Yeah.
Yeah. He
You've
did.
got
I
to
mean,
get your spectacle in, and he did. Like,
he was the one that he was clearly the guy that was like, okay, I'm in this new match. What can I do with this chamber to make it different? What can I do? You know, how can I use this chamber to make some moments and make this match different from, let's say, a normal steel cage match or anything else? So that I definitely would agree with. Yeah. But yeah, him getting eliminated with the
he got drop kicked. Yeah.
I feel like maybe the idea was that he would, because when Van Damme used to do the frog splash, he would do it and he would pop up straight away. He would like bounce off the guys. Yes. So I wonder if it was supposed to be like a quicker timed thing, whether it's supposed to be frog splash, boom, pop straight up into the
bang
missile drop kick, kind of like a cool like boom, boom, and a quick pin, maybe. But because the frog splash didn't go so well, and obviously messed up Triple H, it was slow, and then he kind of like finally walks around into a missile drop kick, 1, 2, 3. It seemed a bit of a again like a flat finish, kind of like the snap suplex from Victoria earlier.
The hardcore match, it did. I just want maybe like my mirror theory, maybe with Triple H, was somehow going to be involved in something, and it was clear that he couldn't be because of his neck, so they just did any old thing. Maybe I'm not.
That's a good point,
because it was. I don't think I've ever seen somebody be eliminated with a drop kick, apart from apparently Chris Nowinski in real life.
Right. Oh, geez.
But yeah, it was odd.
Well,
or maybe it was a timing thing. Maybe they're like, you've gone over, just get out.
Right,
I don't
get
know.
out of there. Maybe. I mean, a lot of stuff went wrong with this chamber, which I'm going to get into. One of the things that went wrong, poor HBK Shawn Michaels. What do you think of Shawn Michaels' now kind of infamous brown ring gear tights?
I've got this as a note. He's got his Klaus Kinski like He-Man haircut, like a bob.
Its hair is terrible.
His hair is awful. I mean, I can't talk, you know, at least he had it back then at least. But what was he doing? Yeah. And then he's got this outfit as well. And he looked atrocious. But he's Shawn Michaels, you know.
He's still Shawn Michaels.
And he still is Shawn Michaels. But he has to sign, he signs off on his gear, right?
So here's the story. So Shawn Michaels had returned a few months earlier at SummerSlam 2002, where they'd convinced him to do one more match. And he did the match with Triple H, but it was a street fight, I want to say. So he just wore jeans in the street fight. The match went really, really well. And of course, just like any wrestler, it's supposed to be a one-off, but you got the taste for it. Oh, can you do this Elimination Chamber match? It's like, okay. But I guess someone within WWE told him, okay, we don't want you to wear jeans for this next one because it's, you know, a normal match. So the seamstress or gear maker asked him, oh, would you like some kind of earth-colored tights? And he thought, oh, yeah, why not? And I guess it was going with his whole born-again Christian gimmick or something. I don't know. But either way, they end up being like a really horrible brown color, and somehow she didn't finish the gear in time. So the gear, I assume it's supposed to say HBK on the tights, but she only got their H's done. She's just wearing these brown tights with H's on the side. But this just still blows my mind. I just can't believe that. Surely you're on the day and your gear's not ready. Surely they would do anything, the company, to make sure that his tights were complete.
Main event
of a pay-per-view for the world title.
Pay-per-view, yeah. And that actually, going back to the whole cutting from the world, like the production managed to get this live feed from a live band working, but they couldn't stitch a B and a K. And it's not like his name is HHH, like Triple H, so it could be like, oh, well, he's still known as Hunter to somebody.
Right.
He's not known as Hart.
Yeah, or H, yeah.
Yeah, like, he's a Heartbreak Kid. He's just Hart, just his heart.
I just, like, he obviously was convinced that these tights would be made for him, because, like, when he retired in 98, I assume he didn't throw away all his gear. He must have had loads of tights still.
You'd keep it, wouldn't you?
Do you not think he would have brought at least a pair along with him just to, you know, be on the safe side? It seemed really bizarre that this was the only thing that he had ready. And to be honest with you, I know WWE's didn't want him to wrestle in jeans, but at that point, I feel like the jeans would have been better than the tights. Put the jeans on, right?
Do you remember when The Undertaker forgot his pants and he had to borrow the Godfather's, and he's just in these snakeskin pants for no reason? Maybe he forgot his pants and they made them half an hour before his dudes get stitched. Just, well, we don't have time. Okay, H is fine.
I don't think I don't know how. Shawn Michaels in his book just says that she didn't finish them in time, but he doesn't really give any context. So,
so this isn't your theory. You've got this from.
Oh yeah, yes. This is in. Shawn Michaels'
is an
book.
Established. Oh my god! So this actually.
Shawn Michaels said he was like so embarrassed. He said in his book, I might be wrong, but he said in his book he's like backstage and he can tell Triple H is looking at him like, what on earth is this? Like his terrible gear, his terrible haircut, and Shawn Michaels' wife is there, and he turns to her and is like, "Do I look okay?" And she's like, "You look great." And he's like,
"You look fine, honey." In his book, does he comment on his own haircut?
I think so. I can't remember why he had that terrible haircut. I mean, to be fair, this is only, unfortunately for Shawn, this is only the second worst he's ever looked. I don't know if you've ever seen Shawn Michaels' last match in Saudi Arabia. Oh, we're going to have to watch that one day. We're definitely going to have to cover that. He got brought out of retirement a couple of years back to do a match in Saudi Arabia, teaming with Triple H against Kane and The Undertaker. And it's just like the worst match of all time. The whole thing falls apart. It's just, it's so funny.
We'll have to cover it. Yeah.
It's really funny. But yeah, for him here, obviously we know that he ends up going over and winning the world title in this gear. I think this gear, this look of Shawn Michaels is maybe what people remember this pay-per-view for the most. I mean, obviously not for the right reasons. So yeah, the chamber is terrible to work in. Shawn Michaels' gear is terrible.
It's disgusting.
Triple H gets messed up big time.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be the main guy in this match. He gets messed up big time. Then the next big mistake happens. I don't know if you spotted it. I'm just going to get into it. So basically, when Kane enters the match, Kane was not supposed to enter the match. That was supposed to be Shawn Michaels.
What?
The lights and everything else that come on and the door opens, they got it messed up. They basically they put the light on the wrong person. They put it on Kane. So when Shawn Michaels was supposed to be coming in, it ended up being Kane. So Kane was out a spot early, basically.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
So the whole match was planned around Shawn being out at that point, and Kane came out.
Kane was going to be
go with it.
Kane was going to be the last person. Yeah.
And they just had to.
Well, yeah, the light goes on, the door opens. He's not going to be like, no, we've planned it next.
Press it again until we get the result that we want.
Apparently, Triple H tells a story that Jericho goes over to him, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "No, I'm messed up. I'm messed up." He's like, "Oh shit!" And then he's like, and Jericho's like, "They just let Kane out as well. Oh my god! Oh my god!" Like, it's just falling apart. So obviously Kane has to come in and just completely improvise basically a whole 5 minutes from what they had planned. Shawn Michaels tells the story that he's like in the pod and he's pretty much just laughing at this point just because of how bad everything has gone, just like almost like an out-of-body experience. Like, how did I get to this position, this point? So, I mean, here's the thing. They're all professionals. They're all veterans. They kept it together. I don't think anyone really watching would have been able to tell. And maybe it worked out better the way that he did it. I don't know, with Shawn being last now. But I think that was just so funny. And you said about how impressive it was that WWE could do this thing where Saliva are performing at the World for Chris Jericho's entrance for this match. But they can't get something...
push a button and get a light to turn up in the right.
Yeah. They get something like that so easy wrong. So... I thought that was really funny.
I don't want to jump ahead to like the end, but it's just with everything that you've said, it's miraculous like how good it was. The show and like the paper, and this is still, I would say this is like a 5-star pay-per-view. I loved it, the entire thing I'm talking about. So just with all of that going on, and it was still an absolutely fantastic match, pay-per-view. Just shows how good it really is at that time.
You can tell Kane's working on the fly because at some point he just does like a bog standard suplex, which is a move that Kane never does.
Yeah.
It's like, suplex, it's just like, what should I do now? Like, it kind of made me chuckle, like knowing the story and then watching it and him just doing a suplex. I was like, oh yeah, he's just working on the fly, just like, what else can I do? We spoke about Scott Steiner earlier looking jacked. Triple H looks absolutely insane here. And there's a shot, I want to say, on his entrance where the light is on him and his legs just look insane. Just like veins popping from his legs. He was basically like a bodybuilder at this point, about to compete.
Yeah,
he looked
sure.
insane. Yeah. I don't know how he wrestled like that. I do also have on my notes, really good pop for RVD, but a huge pop for Triple H. Triple H, obviously supposed to be the heel here. Super duper over with the crowd. Triple H gets color, gets blood really early on in the match.
Yep. Was he who got thrown through the?
So that was another.
Was he who broke the pin in the door? I think he was, right?
So the guys got told to not break the pods, that it'd be too dangerous. And Kane, obviously, they botched his entrance. He came in too early, and he was so mad about the botch that he threw Jericho through the pod. It was like, screw them. Like, that's how mad he was. I guess it's one of those things. Yeah, well, I think it's one of those things where it's like everything's messed up, and it's like, all the stuff we had planned, we can't do now. It's like,
it's all gone to shit. Let's just do it. Let's fill this in with the best we can do. Let's just break it. Let's just trash it. Let's just
exactly. I have on my, what's so funny. So like Triple H is proper messed up, and he just he's pretty much just laying on the apron, and every now and then he'll just pop in and take a few punches and then be back out again. Later on in the match, he then takes an elbow drop from Shawn Michaels. I want to say off the top of the pod, he must have been absolutely bricking himself taking that elbow, just like, not again. He must have been like, oh man, it's pretty incredible. Obviously, he had there was that famous injury where he tore his quad, was it, in a tag team match on Raw with Jericho, and he continues the match with a torn quad and ends up taking the walls of Jericho on top of the announcer's table. Like, it just went another 10 minutes with a torn quad. Triple H, people give him, a lot of flack over the years, but man, his heart and soul is undoubtedly with this company. Yeah. Oh my Lord. Oh. If your throat gets crushed and you can't breathe, are you really going to be like, I need to finish this title match? Or you just like, I don't know, he could have died. Like, it's pretty crazy.
And if you hit your throat a little bit, it hurts for a good amount of time. Like, harder than that, but I'm just saying don't do it. But I'm just saying, like, if you've ever hit your throat, it hurts for a good amount of time. But that's hitting your throat, right? Now imagine having Rob Van Dam land on your throat. Like, there's a difference between your throat getting crushed and like something like that, off of however high that is as well. That's disgusting. Like, he's lucky he's alive.
And Van Dam
finishing the match.
And Van Dam, I've met Van Dam a bunch of times. He's a big guy. Like, he probably weighs 235 or 240 or so. He's a big guy. And coming from that height, knee first into the throat, not being able to breathe is one of the worst pains and feelings there is, right? Not being able to breathe. It's horrible. You get something stuck in your throat, not pleasant. This must have been
you just get that pure fear that you can't control either, like that body fear. Like, it's just your body just kicks in. You just get that fear on top of it.
It does. All in all, this was
a disaster.
It was a disaster, but
like
they
a beautiful disaster. Yeah,
they somehow kept it together. It was a spectacle. Here's the thing: like I said, they're all veterans, but they're all like over acts. Everyone here was over and established with the audience. I feel like it would have been hard, despite all the things that went wrong. It would have been hard for them to have like a really bad match here.
Who was RVD, Booker T, Kane was eliminated, and we're left we are left with Triple H, Chris Jericho, and Shawn Michaels. Like, obviously, of course, you'd think that you would. I put that in my, why I'm bringing this up is I put this in the notes. I put like, now all the interesting participants are eliminated. We are left with Triple H, Chris Jericho, and Shawn Michaels. But now I want to revise that, now knowing like all the hardships they had to do, the fact that they were all completely the wrong order, just the madness and chaos that surrounded that match, it does give it such a new perspective, which I didn't know any of that, but that's crazy. Yeah.
Well,
so I guess it would have been.
Well,
So
here's the
everything they
thing.
just do on the fly, and
They're working towards the finish, and they got Van Damme in there, who's popular, and Booker T, who's popular. Ultimately, they want to get the best response for the finish of the match. The finish of the match is the babyface going over Shawn Michaels. It's best for the story of the match to have two heels in there at the end, because obviously they can double team Shawn Michaels. The odds are not in Shawn Michaels' favor. It looks like he's going to lose because it's 2 against 1, but he overcomes the odds, beats them both, and become world champion. But if you had like a Van Damme in there, or a Booker T, or even a Kane, you don't want to split the audience, you know?
That makes sense.
At the start of the match, they might be, oh, I like Van Damme, or I like Booker T, or I like Shawn Michaels. But the second half of the match, you got 2 heels and 1 babyface. So despite who you might have been cheering for before, now it's like,
the story requires.
Yeah, I want to see Shawn Michaels. Do you want that 100% of the fans behind Michaels to get that desired finish, to get that desired pop at the end? And they really did pop at the end. This was, I don't think people were expecting Shawn to win the world title. I know I was not, because he'd come back for that match at SummerSlam, the street fight with Triple H, which is awesome. Part of SummerSlam 2002, which is one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time, which we'll definitely have to cover maybe sometime soon. Maybe when SummerSlam comes up, we'll do SummerSlam 2002. Sorry, spoilers. But the idea was it was a one-off, and then he got convinced to be put in this match. So here you just think, oh, he's just going to be Shawn Michaels.
Another one-time appearance.
Right. So he wins the world title. It's like, oh, now he has to come back and do more.
Because he's got the title, yeah. He's got to be here now.
Right. So I mean, people could critique at the time saying, okay, they should have used this opportunity to make a new star like Booker T or Rob Van Dam. But I think here it probably was the right time for Shawn Michaels. What's really interesting is Shawn Michaels had this comeback in 2002. He ends up having, I want to say, like a longer second run than his first run. Like he wrestled all the way up to his last match, one of the matches with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. He had like a really long second run. And a lot of people would argue that his second run was better than his first run. And it probably was. He had so many, I think his character on the first run was much better. But I think in ring, the second run, the actual match quality might have been better with his second run.
Are you a Shawn Michaels fan?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm a Brett guy overall.
No, you are, because that's why I asked. I know you're a Brett guy, but
I mean,
sometimes like it's one of those. Oh, do you like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles? It's like both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like you can only pick one. It's like no, like
no. Shawn Michaels, obviously, an absolutely incredible performer. You can't take away anything from Shawn Michaels. And like I said, I think I maybe preferred his second run to his first. So just the fact that he was retired for all those years because of back problems, the fact that he could come back and do all this and still take the bumps that he could. He was taking that flip bump in the corner thing, and pretty remarkable. Like he could move that way at that age. So I thought it was quite a nice Cinderella ending to the Elimination Chamber to have Shawn Michaels up. I feel like for the first Elimination Chamber, just to not have a bad taste in people's mouth, it felt like they needed to have a babyface go over in the end. I think if Triple H would have won, it kind of would have been like, You remember the first Hell in a Cell match was Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, and they had such an amazing match. And that's obviously when Kane debuted, and it really put over the Hell in a Cell as like an exciting and really cool match. So then this match had a lot of expectations going into it. These guys really needed to put on a good show so they could make this Elimination Chamber a thing. The last thing they would have wanted was to do this one and done and never be seen again.
Spend 250, well, I had to make it again, but spend 250 grand on this thing and it's just a one and done. It fizzles out. Yeah, I thought it was a success, despite everything that you just told me, which sounds awful.
Well, it's funny because they did this Elimination Chamber here, and then they would continue to bust out the Elimination Chamber every now and then, maybe once a year. And they got to the point where, I believe it still is, Elimination Chamber is its own pay-per-view. Did you know that?
So the same thing with Hell in a Cell, right?
Yeah, so I don't think Hell in a Cell is a pay-per-view anymore, but it was for a while.
Oh, okay. I thought
so now they do like, they did a TLC for a while. Again, they might have changed
TLC
it.
pay-per-view.
There's a TLC pay-per-view. There was a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, which I think is still going on now. I'm trying to think of the others. Money in the Bank, obviously, became a pay-per-view.
Money in the
That's
Bank. Money in the
still.
Bank. Yeah.
So I don't think they do TLC anymore. I think they just do Money in the Bank. But they've made a whole pay-per-view out of this thing. And to me personally, I'm not a big fan of. I think they should have the Elimination Chamber when the kind of situation or the program suits it. I don't think they should just be like, oh, it's coming up to Elimination Chamber. Like, let's throw 6 guys in there. I think for me personally, I think it's better if there's like a story where it's like, oh, how can we, fix this? Okay, let's have an Elimination Chamber match rather than just having an actual, scheduled Elimination Chamber match each year.
I completely agree. Obviously, Royal Rumble always should be the exception.
Yes.
That's basically named after a kind of match type if you think about it. That's the exception. But yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I don't like, it's this year, it's Hell in a Cell again. Well, I think busting it out, like you said.
Especially with Hell in a Cell. The idea of Hell in a Cell just...
That should be a once in a blue moon moment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the idea of they've got a match that they need to find people for. It should be there's this blood feud.
The other way around. Yeah. And they need to find a match type that could only satisfy this feud, not the other way around. Oh, we've got this. Yeah. Hey, so Money in the Bank being a match type and then a pay-per-view, TLC being a match type and then pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell being a match type and then a pay-per-view. You know what this means? We need to make a tables pay-per-view, tables championships. Just pay-per-view called Tables.
They made the TLC pay-per-view. Maybe the Tables pay-per-view just be T pay-per-view.
T.
Just the T.
Who's going to win the Tables championship at Tables?
What I will say is, just to go back to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-views, now as well, they do 2 Elimination Chamber matches on one pay-per-view. They have the men's Elimination Chamber and a women's Elimination Chamber. How do you feel about that?
I don't like that aspect. We're going to have your guys' version. We're going to have your guys' version.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as organic.
I think it's really cool having a women's Elimination Chamber. I think that's really
fine.
cool.
But when it calls for it,
it should be one or the other, though. I think doing
I completely
of the same match on the show. I don't know. I mean, there's an audience for it, and I'm pretty sure WWE's still doing good business, so it's great.
Working, yeah.
It's working, obviously. But just for me personally, I think it would have more mystique to it and seem like a bigger deal if it's just the one.
It would have more mystique to it, and also it would feel more earnest if, hey, we can. There's 6. Like, let's say instead of just having a man's one and a woman's one, let's say there's these 6 women. We've got 6 people in this feud. Well, how do you settle a 6-person feud? We bust out the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Where the match type calls, rather than just here's yours and here's yours. Yeah, no, for sure.
Was there any other final thoughts on this particular match?
On this match, no. I one little thing was HBK was gearing up for a Sweet Chin Music, and you think he's going to get it. He doesn't. I think he gets pedigreed right, but then he turns it around at the end. He does another quick Sweet Chin Music, and then he gets it. I feel like it would have been better if he did get that Sweet Chin Music that he wanted the first time, didn't have to take the pedigree. I think he already earned the match by that point. He could have just nailed it. I was expecting him to nail it. When he didn't, I was like, oh, okay. That deflated me a little bit.
Oh, it's supposed to get you more excited. They called it a dip in wrestling. Give him a little dip before the finish. But you feel like they already had you invested, huh?
Yeah, and when that happened, I felt like I needed a bit of dip to get me through the rest of it. Yeah, I got a bit deflated. And, I was ready because it's the Sweet Chin Music. It's not like he's doing the whole thing. I just wanted to see him just absolutely nail it. But that's just my personal opinion. You obviously enjoyed that. It worked for you. I've got nothing else to say. I just thought it was really good, and it's actually with the benefit of hindsight of everything that you've told me about the story behind the match, behind the scenes and everything. It's just even more impressive that it happened at all. Nobody died, that it happened at all. Yeah.
And they did it again many, many more times.
Yeah, and they did. And this is actually, in case you're wondering, the first and only Elimination Chamber match I've seen.
Okay, really? Okay, yeah. Interesting.
So I'm glad that that's actually a good thing that I started at the first one for once.
Yeah, there we go. Now you've got all the incarnations to
now I now can see its evolution, which is interesting. What about you? This is obviously you've seen a ton of them. Is this one of the better Elimination Chamber matches from a historic standpoint, or
I
do you
think
there's
so.
some Elimination Chamber matches that were such better matches afterwards that takes precedence over this one just being historic?
I think there was probably more entertaining Elimination Chambers after this, and obviously they got more sort of innovative with what they could actually do in the chamber after this.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think people look back at this match very fondly. Of course, the first is always the best. There's a lot of people's perceptions, and I think people really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was the first match that they'd ever done, or match type they'd ever done of this, and it kind of makes you think like, oh, like what other matches could, other than a tables championship match, what other matches could they invent? Because they could do something super cool like this. It makes you wonder, like, are they ever like thinking, okay, what sort of new match types we come up with? Because I'm sure with their resources and their production and the amount of money the company has,
the sky's the limit. Yeah,
sky's the limit. I'm sure they could do some really, really cool stuff. But I guess with them, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this match. This pay-per-view as a whole, I think it's pretty funny because I don't know if I touched upon this earlier. People look at 2002 as like a down year, and obviously we see the buy rates here down from the year previous. But this show, from top to bottom, there's not a stinker in the whole show, and I'm actually kind of annoyed because we did the Raw after WrestleMania 14 last week, and it was a really amazing show. And then we've done Survivor Series 2002, as voted by you, the listeners of Chillin With The Villain. And again, it's another amazing show. We're not finding anything to crap on. We need some worse shows.
We don't want you thinking we're just going around gassing everything up. We're just keep doing good. We just keep reviewing good shows. Yeah.
People are going to say that we're on the WWE payroll.
That's what I mean.
Payroll now.
Oh yeah,
which we wish. But no, overall, I thought it was a really fantastic show. Obviously, you got the best from Raw, the best from SmackDown. There was no real lulls in the show. There was a little bit of for everyone. The women doing the hardcore. We had the crazy 6-man tag team match at the start. We had some nice cruiserweight action. We had the quick Big Show Brock Lesnar super heavyweights match. The SmackDown 6 just doing their thing, and then obviously Scott Steiner's debut, and then this new concept, the Elimination Chamber. So all in all, I'd say the show was very, very good. If I had to give it a star rating, should we do star ratings? If we start doing star ratings, then people might start taking them seriously and give us credit and be like, oh, well, Marty and Sam said this.
Sam think it's
If I had to give the pay-per-view a star rating, I would probably give it 4 stars.
I would give it a 5.
See, I don't know if there was, for me to have a 5-star show, it needs to have a match that is the best match ever, or a match that I'm completely invested in and just like, that was incredible. I don't know if this show had that for me personally, but overall, I think it was a very, very awesome show.
I feel like we should do favorite show and least favorite match and least favorite match.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marty, favorite match of the night?
The 6-man tag elimination tables match.
Least favorite match of the night?
I'm sorry, probably got to be the women's hardcore match.
Cool. My favorite match of the night was the triple tag. My least favorite match was the Brock Lesnar Big Show.
Oh wow!
But no, it doesn't mean I didn't like it. It's just
yes.
The rest, but no. But the whole thing was why I give this pay-per-view a 5-star. This is the way I grade it. Is I was thoroughly entertained from start to finish.
Yeah.
So from a value proposition. That's not average. That's not above average. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, you cannot argue with that. So
4-star and 5-star. So it gets a combined
9-star.
9 out of 10. Yeah.
Wow. So go out and watch this show. If you can find a DVD of it, I recommend using that. Or if you can find the original pay-per-view, watching it. Don't watch it on Peacock because they cut everything out. But if it's the only way you can find it is Peacock, then you have to be like Sam and I and watch it on there. But overall, very good show for a second week in a row. Bravo, WWE. You did it again. Very, very good show.
Again.
You're making our jobs as reviewers very easy just by being like, yeah, it was good. It was really good.
It was nice. Yeah, I did like it. It was quite good. By the way, if you are like us and have to watch it on Peacock, You got to search for Survivor Series season 16, episode 1.
This drives me
Which is
nuts.
the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
It's so, we didn't realize how good we had it with the WWE Network. I think outside of America, WWE Network's still a thing, but in America it's Peacock. And I just really, really dislike Peacock. The network was amazing. And now Peacock,
So good.
and you pay for it and there's still commercials on it, which drives me insane.
Is there anything else in conclusion? Anything we need to plug?
Well, yeah, we've been busy. We mentioned it earlier, but busy on the Instagram. We also created a TikTok, you don't stop, at the Villain Pod. So which we're not really sure what TikTok is. We're trying to get down and use TikTok. So we're putting some fun content on there. So please give us a follow. Of course, we have the YouTube channel, youtube.com/at the Villain Pod. We're constantly putting content out on there. We mentioned the Instagram page, and we're doing fun things like the polls and everything else and the discussions. So really appreciate you listening today. And if you enjoyed the show and you enjoyed last week's show, then tell a friend. We're trying to grow this podcast. Last week, the first ever episode, I think we had listeners from all over the world, right?
Yeah, we did. We even have listeners in Yemen. And I'm quite a private person, and I didn't think 2 weeks ago or even a week ago that the words "thanks to our fans in Yemen" would ever come out of my mouth. But yeah, no, we've in 24 hours we hit every continent, didn't we? That was cool.
Wow.
So thanks everybody who listened.
Thank you so much.
If you like it, tell a friend. If you don't like it, tell a friend how embarrassing it is. They have to listen. Our handle is the same across the board. Wherever you go, it's the Villain Pod. Whether it's Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. So yeah, thanks for giving us a listen as well. We really appreciate it. Really good feedback, really good support. Thanks.
Yeah,
again.
Keep giving us your feedback, and please, like I said, interact with us on the show social medias. We're responding to pretty much everything. So if you have some thoughts or ways you think you can make this podcast better, let us know. Our egos aren't going to be hurt, or not too hurt anyway. So
unless you come up with a championship that's better than tables, I think that would make us pretty sour. You can come up with something better than that, then all right.
I doubt it somewhat.
I doubt it.
But no, I think that's all for today, Sam.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and have a good week. Till next week.